Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. I woke with a start, darting upright in the bed like I'd only ever seen in those drama movies, the vision I'd seen in my sleep, fresh in my mind as I groped blindly for the paper and pencil I knew were available on the side table. The material met my wandering fingers, along with the comfortingly familiar feel of solid, cool skin, but I couldn't turn my attention away from my task. Jasper watched silently, eyes intent on the image I sketched out, tight-lipped on the page. He could see a square room with dark beams across its low ceiling coming into being. The walls were paneled in wood, a little too dark, out of date. The floor had a dark carpet with a pattern on it. There was a large window against the south wall, and an opening through the west wall led to the living room. One side of that entrance was stone, a large tan stone fireplace that was open to both rooms. The focus of this room from this perspective, the TV and VCR, balanced on a too small wooden stand, were in the southwest corner of the room. An aged sectional sofa curved around in front of the TV, a round coffee table in front of it. All these details were irrelevant in the face of the familiarity. Jasper, no doubt, saw on my face of the growing dread he could likely feel from me. "This is my mother's house," I finally confessed to him in a whisper as I traced the lines with a finger, not caring of the minor smudging I was causing. Jasper had dialed and was already speaking to someone on the other end of the phone before I'd finished the last word, his free hand sliding comfortingly, protectively over my lower back and sending small waves of safety and calm over me. Something I greatly appreciated. "Maddie." I woodenly shifted from my blank gaze at the familiar sketch. "Rosie and Emmett are coming to Seattle." "For what?" I asked, baffled. "To help protect you and hunt down James," Jasper answered slowly, as if it should have been obvious. "We'll meet them at the airport, relocate to your mother's house, head him off, keep you safe." "And Dad? Bella?" I questioned. "Carlisle and Esme are still there, and Edward." The way he hissed out the last name showed just how unhappy Jasper seemed to be with him. I wondered momentarily on that, curious, before returning my attention to the present. It was a good plan, I privately admitted. I was rather amazed. Jasper was willing to have me in the same general vicinity as James in his plan, working as a lure bait in case James caught on or otherwise might have chickened out at 4 vampires being around me. Jasper was obviously confident in their ability to protect me and take out James at the same time. Too bad it wouldn't work. "Would you like to take a nap before we leave?" Jasper offered. "A few hours of oblivion?" "Yes, please." I readily accepted. I couldn't give myself time to think too deeply of what was going to happen soon. I knew if I did, I'd probably break down from fear and anxiety. I'd take Jasper-induced sleep any day, not fighting the heavy fog of lethargy that washed over me, making my lids heavy and close without my help. I woke naturally at around 5:30 in the morning to Jasper's phone ringing as he re-entered the room. "Awake already?" Jasper asked, after rapidly speaking and ending his call. "They're just boarding their plane," he informed. "They'll land at 9:45. I just checked us out." The phone rang again before anything further could be said, catching us both by surprise, though, for very different reasons. "Hello?" Jasper paused. "She's right here." He readily handed the phone over to me. "Your mother, I believe," he muttered softly. Hello? Bella? Maddie?" Yep, the panicky calls weren't difficult to identify. I'd only heard it dozens of times in my childhood. I sighed in exasperation more at the memories than the call since I knew who was on the other end. "Mom, relax," I said patiently, firmly, putting a bit of distance between Jasper and I, his proximity more than anything making me nervous of what I was about to do. "Bella's fine. I'm fine. Take a deep breath and I'll explain everything. All right?" I paused, knowing the silence on the other line was expected, but still unsettling. "Mom?" "Be very careful not to say anything until I tell you to." "Huh?" Bella was right about that. His voice did sound like it belonged in a luxury car commercial. He continued quickly enough when I scoffed at his words. "Now, I don't need to hurt your mother, so please do exactly as I say, and she'll be fine." He paused for a minute and chuckled when I made a sound of derision. "That's very good," he congratulated. "Now repeat after me and do try to sound natural. Please say no, Mom. Stay where you are." "No, Mom. Stay where you are," I exhaled, sounding beyond done with the conversation. "My, you are quite the little actress, aren't you?" The voice was amused, still light and friendly. Perhaps we shouldn't push your luck, though, so walk into another room in case your little act slips. There's no reason for your mother to suffer. As you're walking, please say, "Mom, please listen to me." Say it now. "No, Mom, listen to me already." I scowled into the phone as I made my way stiffly to the bedroom, avoiding Jasper's eyes, but feeling his support even as I closed the door behind me. "A living? I'll assume it's for the sake of sounding natural, as you have yet to give yourself away. Are you alone now? Just answer yes or no." "Uh-huh," I replied flatly, like one does when they're hardly paying attention. "Cute," the voice chuckled. "But they can still hear you. Yes?" "Uh-huh," I repeated just as flatly, staring unblinking at the wall. "All right then," the agreeable voice chuckled. "Say, Mom, trust me," or something similar. "Mom, just trust me already." I ground out in forced calm, obviously frustrated. "Very good," he purred. "This worked out rather better than I expected. I was prepared to wait, but your mother arrived ahead of schedule. It's easier this way, isn't it? Less suspense, less anxiety for you." I let out a classic angsty teenage grunt. Another chuckle. "Now I want you to listen very carefully. I'm going to need you to get away from your friends. Do you think you can do that? Answer me. Yes or no." "Seriously?" I asked, in disbelief instead, telling him clearly how stupid I thought he was. "I'm sorry to hear that. I was hoping someone with your gift would be a little more confident than that. Do you think you could get away from them if your mother's life depended on it? Answer yes or no." Not wanting to drag this out, I answered promptly. "Okay, yes, already," I scowled, sounding properly exasperated. "Much better. I'm sure it won't be easy, but if I get the slightest hint that you have any company, well, that would be very bad for your mother," the friendly voice promised. "You must know enough about us by now to realize how quickly I would know if you tried to bring anyone along with you, and how little time I would need to deal with your mother if that was the case. Do you understand? Answer yes or no." "Yes," I muttered, this time sounding utterly exhausted. "Very good, Maddie. Now this is what you have to do. I want you to go to your mother's house. Next to the phone, there will be a number. Call it, and I'll tell you where to go from there." Unnecessary, as I already knew where I would be going, but he didn't know that, did he? "Can you do that? Answer yes or no." "Got it." "Before noon, please, Maddie. I haven't got all day," he said politely. I only rolled my eyes. "Whatever," I scoffed. Be careful now, Maddie. Wait until I ask you to speak, please." Guess he didn't like too much attitude. "It's important now that you don't make your friends suspicious when you go back to them. Tell them that your mother called and that you talked her out of coming home for the time being. Now repeat after me." "Thank you, Mom." "Say it now." "Thanks, Mom," I sighed, tired. "Say, 'I love you, Mom. I'll see you soon.'" "Say it now." "Love you too, Mom. See you soon," I altered, exasperated. James laughed outright this time. "Goodbye, Maddie. I very much look forward to seeing you again." He hung up. Holy fuck. That was far more irritating and exasperating than it was terrifying. Then again, I was well versed in making anything terrifying into something funny to me in order to not freeze in terror or break down hysterically. I was going to keep doing so until this all blew over, and I had a proper opportunity to absorb all the stupidity I'd committed and reflect back on it properly. For now, I had a letter to write on the very small chance that things would go bad. Obviously, I was neither hoping for nor banking on it going bad, quite the opposite, but I believed in being prepared for any eventuality and refused to potentially die without some form of farewell to Jasper, who I knew would utterly shatter if the worst were indeed to happen. "Jasper," I started in my nice, loopy handwriting. It had taken much less time than I thought for the visions to come rushing in of just what James could potentially do to me. I could only be amazed at my utter lack of reaction to them, beyond morbid fascination. All that violence, the unnatural angles, the horrible bruising, the blood. Maybe I was in some kind of shock, to be honest. The scene of my being the victim of such violence was just so utterly surreal to me, so far removed from what I ever believed I would go through, that it just didn't really register that it would happen to me at all. I doubted that it would fully register until it was actually happening to me. All the better, I supposed. The longer I thought of the scenes I just witnessed as detached from me, the less time I had to grow fearful and chicken out and fuck things up. I wondered if Canon Alice had seen such violence being done to Canon Bella, pondering it to distract myself while I showered, seemingly for the sole purpose of at least looking good before looking like I had been the victim of a horrible car accident. With a punk rave Spiderella top, cross straps, mesh pantyhose, wrap leggings, faux fur black lace-up ankle boots, and a leather jacket, that wasn't too difficult to accomplish. I was barely out the bathroom door when Jasper brought me back into his arms, his emotions soothing my tension as much as his action of nuzzling my neck did. When both of us anxious to get this ordeal over with, it took less than 10 minutes before we were on our way to the airport, Jasper shooting concerned glances at me the entire way, likely because I felt far too relaxed and calm in this situation. I just thought I was prepared, so felt no need to feel panicked or concerned. "You're graduating this year, aren't you?" Jasper gave a slow blink as he processed the seemingly random question. "Yes. What do you plan to do next year?" "Wait for you," he replied instantly. No hesitation, as if the answer was obvious. Maybe it was. "What college are you going to apply to this time?" I asked curiously. "I was thinking of giving you some options, and asking which you'd prefer to attend." I only laughed. Jasper, college is great and all, and I respect whoever chooses to further their education. But going there straight out of high school was hardly my life plan. I realize, though, that it is something Carlisle likes you to do, and that you all choose to respect that, so will I. That being said, I don't care which college as long as I'm with you. So choose whichever one you'd like. "And you're sure you can get in?" Jasper smirked with a raised brow, already guessing at my reply. "Love, my gift can be just as much of a cheat as Edward's. Not to say that I don't make sure I understand the material, but I've used it to see just what I need to study in order to pass important tests." "You don't go straight to looking for the answers." "What?" "No, I just prefer being prepared and winning," I muttered the last to myself, though obviously he heard. Yes, your competitive spirit," Jasper snickered. "Emmett has fantasized about playing or fighting against you once you've turned." "And when did you think it best to turn me?" I asked curiously. "Sometime between our second and third year of university. Long enough for your friends and family to be accustomed to you being distant and for you to cut off ties should you choose that over disappearing without a word." He knew how likely the first option would be with me if turning Dad wouldn't work out. Everyone but Edward is agreed. "If it were up to him, neither you or your sister would be turned," he commented idly. "Dickhead can fuck off. The final decision doesn't lie with him," I scowled. "I may want to join your family and be turned by one of you, but regardless of whether your family agreed or not, there's no way I would give up forever with you so easily. Worst comes to worse, I'll just find some other friendly vampire to turn me. It wouldn't be difficult with my gift," I sniffed. From the corner of my eye, I saw that my sincere declaration visibly affected Jasper, his grip on the steering wheel tightening to the point that it groaned a bit in protest, his jaw taut from gritting his teeth. "Damn, woman," Jasper growled with emotion. "You're the only one that can rile me up like this. The only one that tests my control more than my thirst." His words only inflamed the warmth in my chest, heart fluttering as I took him in, body tense and struggling to rein himself in. I wouldn't have stopped the next words out of my mouth, even if I could. "I love you." I'm sure if Jasper were human, he would have choked or crashed the car. As it was, he only became unnaturally still and nearly rammed into the car in front when he sped up a bit too much. "Ain't no way I'm gonna let anyone take me away from an eternity with ya, especially not Mason." Oh wow, he whipped out the last name. I thought, the hell has a turd said in past arguments? That's gotten Jasper so ticked at him. Well, at least that's what I assumed. It honestly wouldn't surprise me with how far Edward's head is up his own ass sometimes. That all that comes out his mouth is insensitive. Self-righteous bullshit. "Was that a proposal?" I smiled mischievously, refocusing on Jasper. "If it was, then that means you proposed first," he retorted playfully before giving a handsome grin. "Besides, I think your daddy would about have a heart attack if Yacht got engaged so soon after we got together. Maybe we can start out with this to show him we're serious, though." My eyes widened when he took out a polished wooden ring box from nowhere and flicked it open with one hand, displaying 2 rings of Damascus stainless steel nestled in soft white leather. One ring was wider and larger, the other thin and holding a single small white diamond. Engraved on the inside of the bands were "Together forever, never apart" on my ring, and "Maybe in distance, but never in heart" on his. "Jasper," I whispered breathlessly, unable to say more after he had parked the car and slipped the smaller band on the ring finger of my left hand. Jasper smiling when I shakily copied him with the remaining band. "The engraving was a suggestion from the maker when I commissioned the rings," he confessed. a bit embarrassed, and I had been going back and forth about giving this to Ye when we got some alone time after that game, but then he trailed off and shrugged. The interruption of the small coven left unspoken. You realize that a promise ring is not going to make my dad freak out any less, right? Especially such an obviously personalized ring. I informed when he unnecessarily helped me out of the car. Jasper only chuckled. I know. As expected, their plane was landing in Terminal 4. The largest terminal, the most confusing, and the only one with a door on Level 3 that would let even physically impaired Bella escape her vampire guard. I confidently led the way from the 4th floor of the parking garage, obviously familiar with the place. Taking the elevator down to Level 3, where the passengers unloaded. I looked around in disinterest as Jasper gazed intently at the departing flights board, clearly calculating the pros and cons of every state. I waited, impatient from where we sat in the long row of chairs by the metal detectors, making Jasper smile when I fiddled with our promise rings, hands entwined. Finally, the numbers changed on the arrival board and showed their flight would arrive 10 minutes early. It was the signal I needed. I want food. Jasper simply stood wordlessly, gently guiding me to do the same with our still connected hands. We walked silently as he shifted his hand from mine to rest on my hip, the touch gentle but firm. I was amazed when I not only managed to slip a note to a waitress for a food stand as we passed by, but also make sure to wink at them and make sure she knew I was serious about what I wrote. All without Jasper noticing, waiting until he was thoroughly scanning his surroundings again. Not long after, we reached the corner where the Level 3 ladies' room was. My target, "You freshen up," I pointed to the door. "I'll come back." "Eventually, hopefully." "I'll be here," he murmured, leaning down to give me a short peck on the lips before letting me go. Once inside, I spotted the kind old woman I'd seen in my vision, just reaching the sink to wash her hands. "Hello," I greeted as softly as I dared while making sure she could still hear, hoping to all the gods the noise of the airport and Jasper's consideration would have him drowning out my words. "Hello, dear," the woman warmly returned, pausing from where she had been about to turn on the sink, obviously sensing I had more to say. "Perceptive woman, I'm sorry to disturb you, but I was hoping you would pass on a message to my ridiculously handsome partner when you leave. I'm about to run off and lead him on something of a treasure hunt, you see." "Say no more," the old woman chuckled. "It's nice to see young couples haven't lost the creativity and passion I saw in my youth. What would you like to pass along?" "Only tell him I'll return, if I can, and to wait for my order at the tap room." "Bending the truth, I see," she chuckled again. "What does he look like, dear?" "Trust me, you'll know him when you see him, but if you'd like..." I held up my left hand to show her my promise ring. He's wearing a matching band. "My, how pretty." She smiled. "No problem at all, darling. Leave it to me." She winked as she turned on the faucet. "Take your time. I need as much of a head start as I can get." I grinned. The action a bit forced before I took off sprinting, now assured my initial message would be delivered and extremely wary of being caught. Out the second bathroom exit and straight into the elevator, I made a mad dash, blood pumping through my veins as I darted around people, using my size to my advantage. The only thing that kept me from squirming impatiently in the elevator I just barely caught was the presence of the other passengers squished in the compartment with me. As soon as the doors opened enough, I was off again, ignoring the annoyed, curious murmurs behind me. Immediately, I slowed to a casual walk as I passed the security guards, using the small opportunity to catch my breath before returning to my mad sprint as soon as the exit doors came into view. There was no doubt in my mind that Jasper had by now received my message, but with the crumbs I left and his inability to use his supernatural gifts in such a highly populated area, he wouldn't catch me. Spotting no cabs out on the crowded curb, panic nearly seized me before I spotted a shuttle to the Hyatt, preparing to close its doors. "Hold up!" I shouted eagerly, waving at the driver as I ran. "This is the shuttle to the Hyatt," the driver said, in confusion, as he kept the doors open. "Lucky?" I sang, near breathless. "I made it just in time." He looked askance at my luggageless state, but then shrugged, not caring enough to ask. I simply shrugged, too, at his indifference, before sitting far from the other passengers and bouncing my leg nervously as the scenery blurred and shifted the farther away. We got from the airport. Worry was at the forefront of my thoughts concerning my mad scavenger hunt plan. Granted that I planned this down to the finest detail, using my gift long before Jasper and I became a couple, only needing to adjust my plans a bit and double-check with my visions every time I felt there was a change that affected said plans, but still needing to rely on so many outside factors at all. rock solid vision insured or not, was extremely daunting. The whole point of me using my visions thoroughly enough to give me a migraine every time I revised them was so that I'd be assured everything would go off without a hitch, and even now, as I constantly monitored the progress with my visions, it was all going perfectly. It was only my lack of trust in people in general that had me nearly nauseous with anxiety on whether they would do the small, highly unusual favors I asked of them. Gratefully pulled from my thoughts by the shuttle stopping, I jumped out and continued riding my incredible luck, sliding into the seat behind the driver of a cab that had just dropped off a tired-looking couple, removing the last of their luggage from the trunk. The tired couple and the cabbie blinked at me in shock. "Sorry, I'm in a huge hurry," I spouted out my mother's address. "I needed to get there like 5 minutes ago." "That's in Scottsdale," he complained. "And I'm sure a solid 100 will be enough for your trouble," I retorted with a raised brow, said folded bill held up between two fingers. "Yes, ma'am." He grinned enthusiastically, quickly snatching up the bill. I sighed heavily, slumping against the seat as the familiar city began to rush by me. "So what's the big hurry? Late for some appointment?" The cabbie asked casually, obviously open to some conversation now that I'd tipped him generously. "Sort of. I just ditched my intended and his family at the airport to start off a kind of scavenger hunt. I've been planning for months," I replied, honestly, needing the distraction from my doom and gloom thoughts. "The address I gave you is my next stop before I'm running to the final destination. Hopefully the last isn't literal." "Ha, kids. These days are getting real crazy about the romantic stuff they pull in relationships now, huh?" The cabbie grinned. "Nah," I grinned back a bit tiredly. "I'd like to think that I'm a special case. If I wasn't, I'd probably crack my head on a wall in exasperation and disbelief." The cabbie only laughed, content to remain silent until we got closer to our destination. "Hey, what was the number?" 5821, I repeated airily. "Gotcha." He grinned at me through the rear view mirror, saluting me jokingly. "Thanks for the tip. Good luck with your stuff." "Thanks," I replied dryly, making him laugh as I took off at a brisk walk, running to the door as soon as I heard the cab driver drive off. The house was obviously empty and dark. I turned on the kitchen light and snatched up the phone, only then noticing the small 10-digit number written in a small, neat hand on the whiteboard. My hand quivered as I slowly dialed in the number, feeling like the stupid protagonist of some B-rate horror film as I held the shaking phone to my ear. Mercifully, it rang only once. "Ha! I would have expected him to drag out the suspense to psych me out more. Impatient? Arrogant? High on his perceived success?" I wondered idly. "Hello, Maddie," that easy voice answered. That was very quick. I'm impressed. "Is my mom okay?" I questioned immediately. The last thing I needed was for him to find out his little trap had already been seen through. Just a hint that I'd caught on and the bastard would run to regroup, thinking, more or less correctly, that I was stepping in on purpose to act as bait and distraction so the Cullens could finish him off. True, technically, only the Cullens were not aware of the plan, and, if I could help it, neither would James be. "She's perfectly fine. Don't worry, Maddie. I have no quarrel with her. Unless you didn't come alone, of course." Light, amused. "I'm very alone. I'm probably the only one who would think reenacting Bella's stupid martyr plan was the most viable solution to getting rid of James. But I could come up with no other plan with a higher guarantee of James being permanently dealt with in the end. If I had acted too early, either informing others or acting on my own, Victoria might have caught wind of the danger with her totally cheap gift, and if I had deviated after the initial confrontation, again either by telling others or acting alone, especially with Alice now in the mix, my visions wouldn't be enough of a guarantee for any plans we came up with in the future, and circumstances, created by everyone, acting independent of my future knowledge, wouldn't happen if I had told them everything, even if they tried. Just having that foreknowledge would affect whatever decisions they may have made in the future, and suddenly, James and his coven become a much bigger threat to the Cullens and the Swans than anyone ever thought possible. No, of course I would go with the one plan I knew had the highest chance of at least James and Victoria ending up dead, stupid martyr plan or not. Well, it was a good start so far. What with Victoria already dead, I'd ignore red-eyed Alice's involvement in that achievement for now, despite regularly checking on her unchanging position to make sure she had yet to bother looking into James's non-existent future. Very good. Now, you do know the ballet studio just around the corner from your home, don't you? Been snooping around in the photo albums, have you? I scowled. The hunter only chuckled darkly. Cheeky thing, I could hear the smirk in his voice. I'll expect you very soon. He hung up. I took a single moment to center myself before bursting into a small flurry of action. I hastily wrote a short note to the Cullens for when they finally got there, copying the number on the back just in case, before erasing its existence from the whiteboard and darting out the door. I spared a long 2 seconds, making sure the door was locked behind me, before sprinting on the familiar path to the dance studio of my childhood. Honestly, all the running was likely unnecessary, but I couldn't give myself leisure time to think, to convince myself that this was a terrible idea. If I allowed myself to relax and contemplate, the terror of the reality of what was going to happen to me would cripple me and put my loved ones in danger. I couldn't allow that. I slowed to a walk, legs shaking as I rounded the corner onto Cactus. The parking lot in front was empty, the vertical blinds in all the windows drawn. I may not have been as athletically challenged as my sister, but that didn't mean I was anywhere near a star athlete either. I took deep lungfuls of breath to stop from panting like a dog, wiping away the thin sheet of sweat I managed to build up with a sleeve. As I got closer, I could see the sign inside the door. It was handwritten on eye-melting hot pink paper. It said the dance studio was closed for spring break. Unusual. I tugged at the door handle experimentally, unsurprised to find it open. My heart stuttered when the door audibly shut behind me. The lobby was dark and empty, cool. The air conditioner thrumming. The sudden change in temperature, especially after my marathon, had goosebumps raising all over with a sudden cold wave sweeping over my body. Once again, I felt myself return to the unpleasant sensation of being a horror film protagonist as I cautiously took a single echoing step inside the eerily empty building. And then my mother's voice called, "Bella, Maddie." Yep, identical to the call given over the phone. Seriously, how much could panic and fear compensate for not recognizing the underlying sound of a pre-recorded voice, or realizing it was the exact same call as the one over the phone? Quite a lot then, if it fooled Bella, but maybe that was me giving her more credit than she deserved. I just huffed and darted to the door where the voice sounded from. "Bella, Maddie, you scared me. Don't you ever do that to me again." Her voice continued as I flung open the door and stumbled to a stop just inside the long, high-ceiling room. My gaze immediately found the source on the TV screen, just in time to see my mother laughing and twizzling Bella's hair in relief, doing the same to me shortly after. It was Thanksgiving. We were 12. We'd gone to see our grandmother in California, the last year before she died. We went to the beach one day, and Bella had leaned too far over the edge of the pier. Typical that she had dragged me into it and knocked off my own balance to try and regain hers. All our mom saw was our limbs flailing, trying to reclaim our balance. "Bella, Maddie," she'd called to us in fear. And then the TV screen was blue. I turned to where I felt his undeniable presence. He was standing very still by a back exit, in his hands, a remote control. Our eyes locked for a long moment, and then he smiled. He walked towards me too close, and then past me to put the remote down next to the VCR. I turned casually to watch him. Now he was starting the mind games. "Sorry about that, Maddie, but isn't it better that your mother didn't really have to be involved in all this?" His tone was courteous, kind. "Absolutely," I replied truthfully. "But then, you suspected from the very beginning that I was tricking you somehow, didn't you?" He purred, stalking around me slowly. A true predator. I could only stiffen at his words. Did he suspect? Clever. Very clever. And gifted too, but your humanity got in the way. Your instincts were telling you I was lying. To run. To preserve your life. But the small, persistent doubt that I really did hold your mother captive won out over your logic. Well, he wasn't entirely wrong. The niggling doubt was there. Not large, mind you. But the negative consequences of my existence in this world haunted me every day. It's why I tried so hard not to deviate from this first major event, the supposedly smallest and weakest threat out of all of them. I knew it had the potential to be so much worse, so keep it more or less the same. It was. My catchphrase really was becoming better. The devil you know, then the devil you don't know. Then again, not many other humans would sacrifice themselves for another, family, or no. His dark eyes assessed me with keen interest. His irises were nearly black, just a hint of ruby around the edges. Thirsty. I will give your strange coven this much. You humans can be quite fascinating. I can certainly see the draw of observing you, even keeping one as a prized pet if they're as valuable as you. It's amazing, some of you seem to have no sense of your own self-interest at all. He was standing a few feet away from me, arms folded, looking at me curiously. There was no menace in his face or stance. Not that I needed the physical cues to understand he wanted to drain me. "Where's Alice?" I asked, managing to infuse genuine curiosity into my tone. "Ah, yes. You would be curious about my own little seer, wouldn't you?" He examined me from head to toe and back. A remarkable amount of similarities. But then that only means I have no need for two. He waved a hand flippantly. "Don't worry, it's just you and me. I sent dear Alice on a simple errand to dispose of your pesky yellow-eyed friends." I openly scoffed at the very idea, though he only seemed to find my response amusing. Obviously, he was unaware that Alice allowed Victoria to be killed. Allowed and that she, for some reason, was off relaxing and doing fuck all for some reason. "I suppose you're going to tell me that your boyfriend will avenge you?" he asked, hopefully. "Or is it intended now? The ring is new. How sweet." "Did he give it to you just before you ran from him to me?" "Yes, but I wasn't going to tell him that. Rather, do you actually not know who it is you're baiting?" I asked in sincere disbelief. "Or is it because you know exactly who you're baiting that you're so twistedly excited?" He paused, absorbing my words and looking undeniably intrigued. "Oh, do tell. I hope you're not exaggerating." "You see, this was all just a little too easy, too quick, to be quite honest. I'm disappointed. I expected a much greater challenge. So, if you're saying I've managed to bait something larger by capturing a smaller prey," he trailed off, eyeing me intently. I obeyed the wordless command. "Are you familiar with the name Jasper Whitlock?" I asked, truly curious, despite myself. "Assuming Whitlock is the true surname of your intended, my familiarity with the name ends there," James replied honestly. "Perhaps you'd be more familiar with his moniker of the God of War." I continued slowly, keenly watching his face to see if the nomadic vampire even recognized it at all. From the way his eyes widened and his jaw dropped a little, I would say yes. I leaned back when James leaned in too close. "Jasper Cullen, the God of War, what on earth is a vampire of his caliber doing picking off animals in that small town, playing at being civil?" he asked in disbelief. "The South is rife with tales of his ruthless efficiency, of the number of vampires, more newborns than anything, that he's decimated by himself. Even the Volturi are in awe of him and respect him. That is your intended." Well, I did have a vague idea of how much of a reputation Jasper garnered from his times in the Southern Blood Wars, but to have it laid out like that, it really was quite impressive. Oh, and James was apparently a total fanboy for him. Who knew? "It's nice to know that you're so excited at the idea of being hunted and torn apart by your idol," I replied dryly. "Him? Hunt me? Oh, my dear girl, how very mistaken you are. You have no idea the effect losing one's mate has on a vampire, do you? Especially if they die the way you're going to," he cooed, stepping back and reaching for a palm-sized digital video camera. Balanced carefully on top of the stereo, a small red light indicated that it was already running. He adjusted it few times, widened the frame. "Now, smile." "You're a sick dastard," I grimaced, internally quite horrified as to what was about to happen. "Yes, you already have an inkling of what I'm planning, clever thing that you are." Ah, just imagining the mindless rage the God of War will go through after he watches this. Well, I wouldn't want him to miss anything. And really, who is to blame for your situation? But him for choosing such a vulnerable mate, and you for being in the wrong place, the wrong time, and indisputably running with the wrong crowd, I might add. "You're a sick bastard," I repeated with a bit more vitriol, the fear starting to claw at my pounding chest. He stepped toward me, smiling. "Before we begin, I would like to rub it in. Just a little bit. To have captured the human mate of the God of War so easily, he must have gone soft. If only I could do to you what I had done to Alice all that time ago, but you have a much stronger grasp of your gift as a human than she did. I was so afraid that mind reader of yours would see it and ruin my fun. The one and only time my prey escaped me, but victory was mine in the end. In a way." "What do you mean?" I questioned wearily. Anything to keep him talking. He beamed at me. Pleased that I asked. "You see, the vampire that was so stupidly fond of this little victim made the choice that your Jasper was too weak to make. When the old one knew I was after his little friend, he stole her from the asylum where he worked. I never will understand the obsession some vampires have with you humans. And as soon as he freed her, he made her safe. She didn't even seem to notice the pain, poor little creature. She'd been stuck in that black hole of a cell for so long, 100 years earlier, and she would have been burned at the stake for her visions. In the 1920s, it was the asylum and the shock treatments. When she opened her eyes, strong with her fresh youth, it was like she'd never seen the sun before. The old vampire made her a strong new vampire, and there was no reason for me to touch her then. He sighed, but the old one underestimated my wounded pride. You see, he was far too satisfied, believing she was safe from me then, so I destroyed him in vengeance. But not before telling him my plans to make her mine, and make her mine. I did. Your own pet seer, I sneered. Who better to guarantee you more successful hunts in the future? Precisely, James grinned. And oh, how simple it was to have her become devoted to me. No memories of her past, no recollection of her sire. A blank slate, I finished flatly. Yes, but she did smell so delicious as a human. I still regret that I never got to taste. She smelled even better than you do. Sorry, I don't mean to be offensive. You have a very nice smell. Floral, somehow. He took another step toward me until he was just inches away. My jaw grew taut when he lifted a lock of my hair and sniffed at it, delicately. Then he gently patted the strand back into place, and I felt his cool fingertips against my throat. He reached up to stroke my cheek once quickly with his thumb, his face curious. I was going to need a serious face scrub after this. Well, curiosity was better than fascination, at least. No, he murmured to himself as he dropped his hand. I don't quite understand, he sighed. Well, I suppose we should get on with it, and then I can call your friends and tell them where to find you. And my little message. Too late for that. I already told them. More or less. At least I hope they got the information by now. I already knew this was going to be bad from the terrible glint in his gaze. The visions of what he'd do to me that I had earlier came rushing back, and the gnawing terror at the sudden realness of the situation rushed through me and froze me in my spot. He stepped aback and began circling again, casually, as if he were trying to get a better view of a piece in an art gallery, his face still open and friendly as he decided where to start. Then he slumped forward into a crouch. I recognized, and his pleasant smile slowly widened, grew, until it wasn't a smile at all but a contortion of teeth, exposed and glistening with venom. Every fiber in my being screamed at me to run, but I forced my body to lock in place, refusing to give the hunter the satisfaction of chasing me, knowing it was what he wanted, the thrill of it. Not going to run? He questioned, his voice coming out as more feral sounding than the pleasant tone from before. Go fuck yourself. Any of my usual witty retorts were lost in the storm of terror raging in my mind. He was in front of me in a flash, unsure if he used his hand or foot, and struck a blow I couldn't see to my chest. I flew backwards and heard a sickening crunch as my head smacked into the mirrors. The glass cracked, the pieces raining down in shattered, splintered pieces on the floor around me. That's a very nice effect, he said, examining the mess of glass, his voice friendly again. I thought this room would be visually dramatic for my little film. That's why I picked this place to tate you. It's perfect, isn't it? Give the bitch a Grammy, I choked as I heaved and struggled to stand, refusing to run or be on my hands and knees in front of him. The wind being knocked out of me temporarily numbing my pain. Casually, he swept his foot to knock me off my own, the action looking light but resulting in the sound of a clean snap before I felt it as I fell to the ground. I couldn't help the guttural shout the new pain brought before I locked my body up, including my jaws snapping it shut and hissing in agony, stiff hands fluttering over my now unnaturally bent leg. Your cheek in the face of death continues to amuse me, James chuckled, but I admit to being a bit peeved that you're not showing more of the fear you're feeling. No sobbing, no shrieking, no running. He sighed and nudged my broken leg with one foot, making me shriek in agonizing pain and anger, the anger fueled by terror. I suppose I'll have to try a little harder with you, but it is half the fun, he smirked then. Would you like to have your mate swear vengeance upon me? He prompted eagerly. He hardly needs the encouragement with how monumental a deck, I croaked out angrily, only to be interrupted by a horrible smack to the face, throwing me back into the broken mirrors. Fucking limp-dick douche-prick, I cussed in my head, blinking rapidly when warm, wet blood began trickling freely through my hair and soaking my top, the sound of it dripping on the wood below loud in my ringing ears. The strong coppery smell was almost twistedly reassuring. It meant this small torture session was almost over. True to my thoughts, a vision of my impending rescue flitted through my mind almost too quick for me to process in my current state. But they're all the same. Through the nausea and lightheadedness, I saw that James had finally lost grasp of his tight control at the sight of my lifeblood. My heavy lids began to fall, slowly making the sight of James lunging at me fade from my sight. My last effort to dodge him being falling to one side from where I was slumped against the broken mirror wall. My eyes closed, and I fell to darkness. As I waded through the darkness, I slipped in and out of visions of my potential future. With the sound of the most attractive, furious, roaring, snarling as a soundtrack, I saw my funeral being held in different locations depending on people's choices. Forks, Seattle, Florida, hell even at La Push. Man, I'd be a popular corpse. Then there were the strange visions of Carlisle, Jasper, and I looking through papers and books of varying thickness in different locations. I didn't recognize what was that about. I was brought back almost to the surface by a sharp pain slashing my shoulder, but I still couldn't quite manage to lift heavy lids, and then I heard it. The sound of my god of war, my angel of death, desperately calling my name. "Madeline, no!" his voice cried in horror. After that achingly familiar sound was another noise, an eldritch commotion that my mind shied away from, a vicious bass growling, a satisfying snapping sound, and a high keening, suddenly cut off. "Maddie! Darlin'! Maddie! Please listen to me! Dove!" he begged. Of course I would, Jazz. Always, I thought, but unable to voice them. Carlisle, my angel, roared. Anger and agony mixed in his perfect voice. "Maddie, come on, darlin'! Don't quit on me now," he demanded. I wanted to laugh at his dramatics, justified as they were, and reassure him I wasn't going anywhere, but I couldn't breath properly. There was a point of pressure against my head. Pain. It opened the floodgates to the rest of it, washing away the darkness in an agonizing torrent. I cried out, gasping, forced out of the numb oblivion. "Maddie, my angel," cried. "She's lost some blood, but the head wound isn't deep," a calm voice informed him. "Watch out for her leg. It's broken." A guttural snarl of rage escaped my angel's curled lips. A sharp stab to my side brought that pain to the forefront, resigning myself to more prodding and pain before I was allowed blissful unconsciousness. "Some ribs, too, I think," the methodical voice continued. "You think?" I retorted mentally before all of my attention was drawn to a new scalding pain in my shoulder that was overshadowing everything else. I was burning alive. "Jazz," I rasped, heavy and slow, barely able to understand myself. "Madeline, you're gonna be fine. Yak hear me, Maddie. You're gonna be fine." "Jasper," I tried again, my voice a bit clearer this time, morbidly. I wondered if the venom was already healing me a bit as it turned me. "I'm here, darlin'." "Hurts?" I croaked. "I know, darlin'. It's gotta—" Then he turned to someone. "Don't you got something to help?" "My bag, please." "Hold your breath, Rosie, it will help," Carlisle promised. "Rose?" I huffed in surprise. "She's here. We all are. You led us on a merry chase." "My shoulder," I gasped. "Your shoulder, little dove?" Jasper asked softly, already suspecting something wrong. "Good." "It's burning," I shouted. Voice hoarse, my eyes finally shuddering open completely, but blood was clouding my sight. "Carlisle," Jasper started urgently. "My shoulder. Fuck, it hurts," I cried as it continued to burn. "Carlisle." Her shoulder. He bit her. Carlisle's voice was no longer calm. It was appalled, angry almost. I heard Jasper snarl again in outrage. "You've got this, Jasper." It was Rosie Lee's voice, close by my head. Cool fingers brushed at the wetness in my eyes. "It's too soon." "There may be a chance," Carlisle said. "Anything," Jasper breathed. "See if you can suck the venom back out. The wound is fairly clean." As Carlisle spoke, I could feel more pressure on my head, something poking and pulling at my scalp. The pain of it was lost in face of the burning venom. "Will that work?" Rosie's voice was strained. "I don't know," Carlisle said, "but we have to hurry." It wasn't like Jasper to hesitate. Seems I still needed to work on his self-confidence regarding his control. Carlisle noticed his hesitation as well. "Jasper, it's your decision. Either way, I can't help you. I have to get this bleeding stopped here, if you're going to be taking blood from her shoulder." I convulsed in the grip of the fiery torture, the movement flaring up the sickening pain in my leg. Jasper, I cried, my blurred gaze locked on his expression, twisted in agony and despair. Trust was the most I could rasp out under the pain, and I did. Trust him. If I could feel anything besides the acid in my veins, it was the absolute love and trust I had for Jasper and his iron will. Rosierly, get something to brace her leg. Carlisle was shocked when Jasper shouted the command as the doctor worked on my head, his pained gaze suddenly replaced by a steely determination. He hovered over me, my shoulder, for only a fraction of a second before his cool lips met my burning skin. And suddenly the pain was worse. I brokenly shrieked and convulsed against the cool hands that held me down. I heard Rosier's voice, trying to soothe me. Something heavy held my leg to the floor, and Carlisle had my head locked in the vice of his stone arms. Then, slowly, my convulsions died as my shoulder grew more and more numb. The acid was dulling, focusing into an ever smaller point. I felt my consciousness slipping as the fire subsided, feeling the tired muscles of my cheeks pulling as I smiled wanly in relief. Jasper, I whispered breathlessly. Little to no volume in it, but they heard. I'm here, darling, he croaked, voice barely recognizable as human. Gold star, I shuddered. Thank you, darling. Jasper huffed disbelievingly at my remark, though a smile reluctantly tugged at his lips. So proud. Knew you could love you, I mumbled, exhaustion finally seeping through my abused body. Is it all out? Carlisle asked from somewhere far away. Her blood tastes clean, Jasper replied quietly. I can taste the morphine. Trust him, I pouted in Carlisle's general direction, getting a chuckle from him. My apologies. Jazz, I called through the strengthening haze. Yes. Next time you're looming over me, sucking on my shoulder and making me scream, I huffed. It better be, because you're giving me the best sex of my life. Muffled. I could hear Carlisle's chuckles and clearly hear Rosierly's snort of disbelief and amusement. Jasper himself chuckled as well, brushing his thumb featherlight over a bruised cheek. Agreed, he murmured. I love you, darling. I know, I sighed with as much cheek as I could infuse under the circumstances, succeeding in making him chuckle weakly again. Score. Maddie, Carlisle asked. I hummed lazily, ready for some well-earned nap time. Where is your mother? In Florida, I yawned. It was a trap. Won't like the video he made. I'm sorry, Jasper. James was a dick. My nose twitched. I smell gasoline. It's time to move her, Carlisle said. No. Sleepy time, I whined. Jasper chuckled again, adoringly. I got your darling, he soothed. And I was in his arms, cradled protectively against his chest, floating, all the pain gone. Sleep, darling, I got you, were the last words I heard. I checked my watch for the 35th time in less than 3 minutes, not even looking up when I heard the bathroom door slide open. Everything about it was unfamiliar, the weight of the footsteps, the sound of the fabric worn, the scent. Not my Maddie. Well, she certainly wasn't exaggerating when she said I would know you when I saw you. I blinked slowly, deliberately, as my gaze shifted to the old woman who had just stepped out of the bathroom. I'm sorry, I asked slowly, thoughts buzzing through my mind at the implications of her statement. Clearly Maddie set her to approach me. No human would dare to otherwise, but why? And polite, too. You do make a very good match, the woman chuckled, blue-gray eyes twinkling in mischief. Was it perhaps wrong of me to feel a sudden sense of dread growing at this unexpected turn of events? Did my Maddie talk to you about me, ma'am? Oh yes, she smiled. Told me to pass on a message, to tell you she'd return as soon as she can, and to wait for her order at the tap room. What? I barely heard myself over my now panicked thoughts, though the stranger seemed to hear me just fine. Your Maddie must have got you good, young man. There's a second exit in that bathroom. She's probably not even at the airport anymore. I'd suggest checking that order out if you want to get to her as soon as possible. Don't panic. Think. Keep a low profile. I took a deep breath, clamping down on my emotions tightly. Thanks for passing the message, ma'am, and the tip. I gave the old woman a polite nod even as my hand reached at a quick human speed for the phone in my pocket. Go on, young man, the woman chuckled. I can easily tell you're dying to chase after her. I could only spare her a grateful nod before turning sharply on my heel and speed texting the family as I steered towards the tap room, determined to find out what my stubborn kitten was up to. It was far too easy a conclusion to make that Maddie had pulled a self-sacrificing move. Again, The dangerous stunts she keeps pulling are the reasons I find it hard to believe her whenever she proclaims herself selfish so proudly. Cute, but wildly inaccurate. Also extremely infuriating. Why did my mate have to be so devoted to her family and intent on sacrificing herself for them? Right, because those are the qualities I had to find highly attractive in a mate. I distinctly remember telling her we'd be having words over her. Continued recklessness. Back and forks. Damn girl manages to distract me every time we're alone with just those damnable, gorgeous verdant eyes. You must be Jasper. My head snapped to a young waitress, and I realized I'd made it to the Seattle tap room while I was daydreaming about my kitten. Wow, I thought she was exaggerating when she said to wait for the hottest guy I'd ever seen, the waitress blurted, slapping a hand over her mouth and flushing. Let me guess, I sighed, unable to hold my anger at Maddie very long. She snuck Yaki note when we passed by earlier. Yep, the waitress giggled. Did it in a sly move worthy of a secret agent movie when you weren't paying attention? I didn't get a good look at you before, but I can see now why she was so confident I would still recognize you. Did she ask you to give me a message of some kind? I asked, gritting my teeth in silent frustration. Yeah, it's with the order she placed, in an envelope. Don't worry, I didn't read it. It should be waiting by the bar. I could only nod silently as I spotted the abandoned tray of food, a lone white envelope propped by it, and went over immediately. Sealed, worn, saturated in her scent. I scowled. She'd obviously been planning this for longer than a couple weeks. I cut open the top with an impatient fingernail, taking out the folded paper and quickly reading the short letter. First off, please don't be angry about the whole fried chicken Southern guy joke I pulled. I gave another deliberate blink as I actually registered what it was he ordered. Free chicken. There was even a bottle of Tabasco sauce beside it. Despite the situation, I scoffed before returning to the letter. Though that's probably not why you're angry. Damn right it ain't. That's irrelevant, though. Excuse me? By now you've probably figured out I flew the coop and are itching to come after me. I'm sorry to inform you that I'm not going to make it easy for you just yet. I swear I'm not suicidal, but I trust that you'll trust me to lead you down the rabbit hole, navigate Wonderland, and get me back safe. This is not a pun on Alice's name. Grab Tweedledee and Dumb if you want, sorry Rosier, and wait for the King of Hearts before getting further instructions. Love, Maddie. P.S. Doesn't it seem like I'm holding myself hostage? Conflicting emotions raged in me at the simple letter. Amusement, exasperation, worry, anger. How could she make light of the danger she's in? Would that make me D or dumb? I scowled at Emmett's chosen announcement of arrival, having approached silently just to read over my shoulder. What do you think, babe? Dumb, definitely dumb, she sneered without bite. May I wordlessly handed the letter to Carlisle. Why are you here? I questioned, having expected him to stay behind in Forks. I suppose my intuition got the better of me, he replied as he sped through the letter. I had a feeling I may be needed here, and with Victoria taken care of, and Alice having run off, I felt that Edward and Esme alone would be sufficient to protect Charlie and Isabella for the moment. He frowned thoughtfully at the paper, examining it. There's a hotel address and room number on the back. Treasure hunt, Emmett asked excitedly. Let's just go already. The more we waste time talking, the longer it'll be until we reach Maddie. Rosalie scowled, just as upset as I over Maddie's stunt. Rosie is right, we must reach her, Carlisle agreed. Before it's too late, left unspoken, hung heavy in the air. It took half a minute after we entered the hotel room for Emmett to speak into the tense silence. So does anyone have any idea what we're supposed to be doing here? How long was his silence, Jasper? Rosier questioned me flatly. 31.6 seconds, I returned in the same flat tone. You have to admit that it is far longer than we expected it to be, Carlisle added with mild humor. Hey, Emmett started indignantly, but before he could go on a dramatic tirade, our attention snapped to the sound of a human stopping at our door. The knock came next. Special delivery. Room service. And that would likely be what we're waiting for, Rosalie commented dryly, not getting up from where she sat, clearly stating without words she would not be the one getting the door. Emmett, being the well-trained monkey he was, did instead, which suited me just fine as I was more likely to traumatize whatever human was behind that door with the intensity of my expression and posture alone. And I had no patience left to regulate either considering the situation. At least Carlisle would be there to assuage the initial fear most have of Emmett because of his bulk. I ignored the pleasantries and chatting, intent on the unusual sound coming from underneath the cover of whatever the hotel worker had brought in. Catching my unblinking stare at the cart he had just delivered, the boy nervously spoke up. "Oh, don't worry about it being dangerous or anything. The sound is just from the sparklers, Miss Swan," requested we add. When I failed to respond, the worker fidgeted and chose to make a hasty retreat. "Well, I'll just leave you and your family to it then. I hope you enjoy your stay," he blathered, nearly tripping over himself to escape the room full of vampires. I wasted no time removing the lid from the tray as soon as the door shut behind the insignificant boy, finding myself once again blinking slowly in disbelief at the sight I found. Emmett, of course, burst out laughing. I chose to ignore the prop on the tray for a moment and instead picked up the fancy note card and read through it quickly. I clicked my heels together 3 times, but these stayed behind with my wizard. Mind bringing them back to me? Why did Maddie always find a way to bring about the human urge to rub my temples as if I had a headache? Vampires don't get headaches, but with the stunts Maddie pulls, she's the closest anyone's ever gotten to causing one. "We're going to her house." I flipped the card to show them the address she wrote on the back. First Alice in Wonderland, now Wizard of Oz. Rosalie rose a brow at the glittery red heels bordered by little sparkler candles. "She's in serious danger, and she still went out of her way to theme the clues we need to get to her. There is something seriously wrong in her head," she scowled, crossing her arms. "Wrong? You mean awesome? Funnest way to psyche us up before we rip apart that hunter." Emmett defended Maddie with a grin. "We're wasting time," I hissed, sliding open the window facing an alley with a fire escape conveniently there. "Sweet. We're gonna sneak out the window like those super spy movies." Emmett snickered, making a low growl escape my throat at how similar his statement was to what that waitress had said about Maddie's note-passing skills at the airport. I did not have the time nor patience for this nonsense anymore. And if Maddie thought the levity of her notes would make me less angry at her decision to put herself in such terrible danger, especially without telling me, then she was very sorely mistaken. Her scent when we broke into her childhood home was still very fresh, minutes old, as if I could expect her to walk in the door looking startled at our presence, then sheepish because of the little chase she put us through. I brushed aside my useless imaginings and nearly broke the counter to grab the note I spotted, far less concerned with watching my strength and speed than I was with getting Maddie back already. When I read the short, hastily written note, I felt like someone had tossed ice water on my fervently working brain. A simple address of a dance studio nearby, and 2 words. "Please hurry." I dropped the damn note like it was on fire and wasted no time hauling ass to the address provided, not caring to give an explanation to the startled cries of my coven, not daring to slow down to allow them to catch up. There was no time for that, and there was no way I was going to waste any more time getting to her. Maddie didn't add any themes or embellishments to the note. Her writing was hasty, sloppy, as if written with a shaking hand. Most importantly, though, when I took in her scent again, I noticed in it the faint, syrupy tinge of fear, and it grew stronger. The closer we got to our destination, the sounds coming from that direction, now that I had a place to focus, were even more damning and would haunt the rest of my eternity. "Give the bitch a Grammy," choked, pained voice. Glass crushed underfoot. A sudden impact. Clean snap. A pained cry forcibly swallowed. An agonized hiss. A dark chuckle. "Your cheek in the face of death continues to amuse me, but I admit to being a bit peeved that you're not showing more of the fear you're feeling." No sobbing, no shrieking, no running. Underneath all the terror and concern and anger, I could feel the grim pride they all felt for Maddie and her defiance, only for it to drown soon after as we kept listening. A sigh, a shriek of pain, an anger. I could feel it now. "Why the fuck was it taking so long to get there?" I snarled in frustration. "I suppose I'll have to try a little harder with you, but it is half the fun. Would you like to have your mate swear vengeance upon me? A prompt, hopeful, eager, excited." "This sick motherfucker," I snarled again, a bit louder this time, but still not loud enough to catch the hunter's attention. Obviously he was quite absorbed with what was in front of him, a fallacy of those like him. A weakness I would happily take advantage of. "He's so dead," Emmett scowled, for once unable to keep his usual cheer. "He hardly needs the encouragement with how monumental a dick." A loud smack, harsh impact, shattering glass, and the siren's call of sweet, fresh blood. "Too much blood. He's deader than dead," Rosioli screeched. No doubt looking an avenging angel, but I didn't care. I was falling to my own rage, unable to hold it back any longer, in the face of what my senses were forced to process. Done being patient, I took off from the sidewalk, feeling it splinter beneath my feet as I leapt straight through a window leading to where I knew Maddie to be. The scene I came upon was something straight out of my worst nightmare. Maddie laying limp, broken, and bleeding, barely conscious against the shattered mirror wall, a thirsty red-eyed vampire lunging at her neck as she fell to her side, a futile last-ditch effort to save herself. "Madeline! No!" I gave a vicious growl, near roar, as I used my momentum to tackle James away from her, using his shock as an opportunity to rip his arm from his shoulder as we skid across the floor. His unnatural high keening and the echoes of his inhuman pain brought me right back to the Blood Wars, and I relished in it. The monster in me finding a visceral joy in his suffering, the likes of which I have never craved before. Not even the deepest hatred I had ever felt for Maria could compare to the dark loathing I felt for James in this instant. Irritated at his vocal cries of pain and sensing he was starting to think beyond it, I began the well-practiced process of dismantling him, piece by piece, just as I had done to Maria's enemies all those years ago, newborn or otherwise. His keening cut off so suddenly, he had no time to understand just when I had rent his head from his body, embedding it in the ground with one foot as I tore him over and over and over again until he was no longer recognizable as anything but shattered marble, scattering bits of him across the room to prevent his regeneration for the moment. Expunged my hatred with the death of my target. Like a switch flipped, I was overcome with fear as I rushed to my hurt little dove's side. "Maddie, darlin'! Maddie, please listen to me, dove!" I begged, hands gouging out pieces of the floor beneath as I resisted the urge to touch her, too afraid I would hurt her worse in the state I was in. "Carlisle?" I roared, anger and agony coursing through me as I took in all she felt and dulled what I could, urging her to consciousness as carefully as I was able. "Maddie, come on, darlin', don't quit on me now," I demanded. Cautious and knowing as he was, my coven leader had only been waiting for my permission to approach, knowing better than to rush in when my instincts were battling for dominance over my actions. He carefully prodded at the wound on her head to examine it. Pain. It opened the floodgates to the rest of it, bringing her back to full awareness. She cried out, gasping, forced out of the numb oblivion. "Maddie," I grit my teeth, my eyes darting around, helpless to do much besides feel along with her. Already Emmett and Rosie had placed James's remains in a metal bin brought from an alley to start the fire. "She's lost some blood, but the head wound isn't deep," Carlisle calmly informed me. "Watch out for her leg, it's broken." A guttural snarl of rage escaped my throat, lips curling above my teeth. He turned his attention to her bruised side, bringing that pain to the forefront, some of my instincts settling when I caught scent of the burning vampire corpse behind me. "Some ribs too, I think," Carlisle observed clinically. I barely registered his words, attention sharply focused on Maddie's emotions, when she felt a sudden, new scalding pain that was overshadowing everything else. But from where? She was littered with injuries. "Jazz," she rasped, heavy and slow, barely understandable. "Madeline, you're gonna be fine." "Yeah, hear me, Maddie. You're gonna be fine." All I could give her now was weak platitudes, and it burned at my chest, something fierce. "Jasper," she tried again, her voice a bit clearer this time. This time, I could clearly hear a sense of urgency in her tone, absent in her emotions. Likely anything else she was feeling was eclipsed by the pain. "I'm here, darlin'," I murmured, brushing aside some locks pasted to her skin, dyed red and staining my fingertips the same familiar color. Never had blood been so unappetizing to me since my change. "Hurts," she croaked. "I know, darlin'. It's gotta..." My gaze snapped to Carlisle then. "Don't you got something to help?" "My bag, please. Hold your breath. Rosie will help," Carlisle promised. Having noticed her coming to hover the same as I had. "Rose?" Maddie huffed in surprise. "She's here, we all are. You led us on a merry chase," Carlisle murmured soothingly. "My shoulder?" she gasped. "Your shoulder, little dove," I asked softly, suspecting just why the pain she was going through felt familiar, but unwilling to make the connection just yet. "It's burning!" she shouted hoarsely, her eyes finally shuddering open completely, but blood dripping mercilessly over her lids and lashes. "Carlisle," I urged him to check. "My shoulder. Fuck. It hurts," she cried as the burning strengthened and, more alarmingly, spread. Carlisle, her shoulder. He bit her. Carlisle's voice was no longer calm. He was appalled, angry almost. I could do nothing but snarl in outrage at the confirmation of our worst fears. You've got this, Jasper. It was Rosia's voice. She had shifted to kneel a safe distance beside me, shocking me when she brushed at the blood dripping in Maddie's eyes. It's too soon, I hissed. And there was no way either Maddie or I would be happy about her being turned by a vampire not part of our coven. There may be a chance, Carlisle hesitated to voice. Anything? I breathed, desperate for any solution he had available. See if you can suck the venom back out. The wound is fairly clean. As Carlisle spoke, he began to expertly sew the wound on her scalp together. The pain of it was lost in face of the burning venom. Will that work? Rosie's voice was strained. I don't know, Carlisle said, but we have to hurry. I had never been the most stable of our coven when it came to thirst. I had never needed the restraint before the shift in diet, and now I was expected to accomplish this near impossible feat. They sounded so sure, but Carlisle's doubt was like a poison feeding my insecurity. Even Rosie and Emmett held a fragment of uncertainty under all their confidence in me. Carlisle noticed my hesitation. Jasper, it's your decision. Either way, I can't help you. I have to get this bleeding stopped here, if you're going to be taking blood from her shoulder. Maddie convulsed in the grip of the torturous venom, the movement flaring up the sickening pain in her broken leg. Jasper, she cried, her blurred gaze locked on my face, eyes becoming amazingly focused and clear for one infant moment. Trust, was all she rasped. And she did. Good Lord, she did. Beyond the waves of agony, all I could feel from her was an unwavering, untainted trust and endless love. For me, only me, always me. My teeth ground together. Angry. I had merely allowed my own weakness to stop me from helping my love, my mate, my reason to live. Rosie, get something to brace her leg. Carlisle was shocked when I shouted the command as he continued working on her head. My hesitation replaced by a steely determination, I moved to hover over her, tearing the fabric over her shoulder carefully, wasting no more time and placing my fangs in the two shallow cuts where James's teeth were redirected by both her actions and my own. And suddenly, her pain worsened. She brokenly shrieked and convulsed against the cool hands that held her down as I kept a precarious balance over my emotions, infusing as much disgust as I could to my act to make it easier to pull away when I needed to, but not enough to pull away entirely too early. Regardless of how much distaste I made myself feel, though, the underlying euphoria her ambrosial flavor brought me could never be completely erased, would never be forgotten. I half listened in as Rosalie tried to soothe my little dove, waiting countless eternities for the taste of her blood to flow into my mouth, untainted by his disgusting venom. It felt as if every second that passed, I was draining more of her life away. My own venom burned at my unblinking eyes. The tingling sensation, something that only happened to those vampires being overcome by despair or sorrow, a mocking reminder of the tears our kind were no longer able to shed. Then, slowly, Maddie's convulsions died as her shoulder grew more and more numb. Her pain was dulling, her natural wounds likely feeling numb in the face of the inhuman agony she had just been confronted with. I quickly retracted my fangs from her injury as soon as the first drop of clean blood touched my palate, only daring one last lick to the wound to lap up the remnants of my own venom, watching intently in morbid fascination as the two shallow cuts closed rapidly and quickly formed two perfect, parallel silver scars, reminiscent of the ones that littered my own skin, if only smaller and more clean. I felt her awareness slipping as the burning of the venom faded from her scattered thoughts. I let loose a relieved sigh as she smiled wanly up at me. Jasper, she whispered breathlessly, little to no volume in it, but we heard. I'm here, darlin', I croaked, voice barely recognizable as human, still struggling to repress the sated feeling having her blood in my system brought me. Gold Star, she shuddered, a small smirk twitching at the edge of her smile. Thank ye, darlin', I huffed disbelievingly at her remark, though a smile reluctantly tugged at my own lips. So proud, knew you could love you, she mumbled, exhaustion finally seeping through her abused body. The emotions her few words brought me almost overwhelmed me, nearly eclipsing whatever struggles I had just been going through, making them seem so utterly insignificant in the face of my love's unquestionable faith and pride in me. Is it all out? Carlisle asked quietly. though he knew he needed verbal confirmation. Her blood tastes clean, I replied quietly. I can taste the morphine. He had injected it sometime during our torture, though it did little to ease her pain until the venom was extracted from her. Trust him. Maddie pouted in Carlisle's general direction, getting a chuckle from him. My apologies. Leave it to her to defend me. Even half unconscious and beaten bloody. Jazz, she called through the strengthening haze of the morphine. Yes? Next time you're looming over me, sucking on my shoulder and making me scream, she huffed. It better be, because you're giving me the best sex of my life. I could only stare at Maddie in utter disbelief as Carlisle chuckled and Rosie Early snorted with her own disbelief and amusement. Emmett's booming laughter sounding from somewhere outside where he had returned the metal bin, now that its purpose was fulfilled. I could only join them in seeing the humor, brushing my thumb gently over a bruised cheek. Agreed, I murmured. I love you, darling. I know, she sighed with as much cheek as she could infuse under the circumstances, succeeding in making me chuckle weakly again. Only Maddie... Maddie? Carlisle asked. She hummed lazily, very ready to surrender to her growing fatigue. Where is your mother? In Florida, she yawned. It was a trap, well, like the video he made. I'm sorry, Jasper. James was a dick. Her little nose twitched. I smell gasoline. Emmett had spilled some on his jeans earlier in his haste, careless. Only now that the worst was over, did he feel confident enough to approach. It's time to move her, Carlisle said. No, sleepy time, Maddie managed to whine. I chuckled again, adoringly. I got yacht, darlin', I soothed, wasting no time carefully scooping her up in my arms, cradled protectively against my chest. She looked so much smaller, more fragile in her current state. Sleep, darlin', I got ya, were the last words she heard before I gently lulled her to a peaceful, deep slumber. It took 2,038 of Maddie's steady, resting heartbeats for me to work up the nerve to open the letter delivered by a mildly perplexed nurse, no doubt wondering over how the sender knew I'd specifically be here long enough to send a physical letter at all. I took a deep breath, assuring myself of Maddie's warm human scent, only tainted by the sterile smell of the hospital and the medicine in her system. I ripped the envelope open with little resistance, more intent on the feel of the thick parchment paper she wrote the letter on than unfolding it to read the words within. Knowing Maddie, the letter was likely something along the lines of a goodbye letter in case her plan went horribly wrong. As it was, watching the video that sick fucker had filmed was hard enough. I wasn't sure if I could handle what Maddie intended to be her final words for me, written or no. But I had to know, if she knew what her death would do to me, then why pull this stunt at all? No, I knew why. From the beginning I knew. But that didn't make it any easier to accept her throwing herself in danger. Determined now, I unfolded the letter in a blink and read. Dear Jasper, if you're reading this, I'm either dead or unconscious in the hospital. If it's the latter, I'm sure you're angry. I wrote the former, but as a seer, it's inconceivable to me not to have a contingency plan for every potential future I witness. But mostly, I didn't want to leave without giving a proper goodbye because you're worth so much more than that to me. I know for a fact if I died, you'll blame yourself, and you may not have the strength to read my final words for many years to come. But I needed you to have physical proof that I don't blame you in the least. And another voice among the, no doubt, many around you saying that it's not your fault. On the off chance I happen to be alive, I am so sorry, but as I've said before, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And with the unknown variable known as Alice mucking up my plans, I couldn't risk taking any chances and deviating from the only path I knew was most likely to end with me alive. So, now that I've gotten that out of the way, I have a few ground rules to lay out on the morbid chance I am, in fact, dead, which I solemnly hope is not the case. Don't you dare kill yourself. The consequences far outweigh the benefits. I hope you understand, if not now, eventually. 2. Don't blame Bella. She's not the cause of this incident. If anything, she's as much a victim as I am. 3. Don't kill Edward. As much as he deserves your anger, he's a little bitch. Killing your brother is a little excessive. I also don't want to share his company any sooner than necessary, so please refrain. 4. Find happiness again. Whatever that means or may be. My death is not the end of everything. I'll assume that you'll respect my wishes and follow my final words whenever you get around to reading this. Otherwise, I'll give you a serious tongue lashing when we meet again. So live, Jasper Nathan Whitlock, and next time we see each other, I'll welcome you with open arms. Forever yours. Madeline Hannah Swan. I had to put the letter aside for fear of tearing it under the storm of emotions I was struggling to control that her letter brought upon me. Making reasonable guesses as to what she wrote was one thing, but actually reading it in her own writing, in her own unique way of expressing herself, was another thing entirely. My little dove had no idea what she would have asked of me should she have died. As it is, she's just recovering, and I already went against 2 of her final wishes before I read the letter. I wasn't irrational enough to blame Isabella for a situation out of her control. But from my understanding of their lives thus far, she was a magnet for danger that only recently shifted to the supernatural. Grateful as I was for the girl's terrible luck to have brought my mate to me, her dragging my Maddie into these dangerous situations with her danger magnetism was the last thing I wanted, and I would have already gotten rid of the threat after that first incident in the parking lot if my Maddie didn't actually care about her sister. Even now, I was still debating the pros and cons of disposing of her discreetly, knowing that Maddie would eventually forgive me for my transgression should I choose to go through with it. Then there was my plans to murder Mason after I found out the little fucker had run off with just the magnet in the baseball field, leaving Maddie to her martyr scheme of putting herself in her sister's place instead of taking her to safety as well, as he could very well had done. And instead of being grateful, he tries to turn our coven against my mate. I took another deep breath, this time to allow Maddie's scent to calm the rage. Mason sparked within me, only for her. Maddie was the only reason I hadn't taught the boy a lesson already. By the same virtue of not wanting to hurt Maddie by hurting her loved ones, killing the brat wasn't a favorable option. A very appealing one, certainly, but unfortunately impractical in many ways. Any lessons I wanted to teach the boy would also have to wait, as I had no intention of giving Maddie anything less than my full devotion while she healed. And there was also the very serious discussion Maddie and I would be having now that the worst was over. All there was to do now was wait for her to wake up. My eyes opened to a blindingly white ceiling. With the ceiling-to-floor window by the bed with cozy chairs and medical equipment between them, I was obviously in the hospital. I was propped up on a surprisingly cozy bed, the rails on both sides a very clean white with soft, fluffy pillows that I'm sure didn't belong to the hospital beneath me. Yeah, with that annoying beeping I'm sure was my heart monitor in the background and the tubes hooked up all over me. I couldn't be anything but alive. Exactly how painful would it be for me if I just took them out? It looks so easy in the movies, but I always questioned whether or not it hurts. Don't even think about it, an exasperated voice sighed. My heart monitor stuttered a bit at my excitement as I looked to the source, sore cheeks lifting to smile. Jasper? I barely had to turn my head to see him. His face just a few inches from mine, his chin resting on the edge of my pillow. Seeing as I couldn't, he closed the short distance and brushed a soft kiss to my lips, the gentle affection and the action making my chest ache. You have no idea how happy I am to see ya awake and looking at me with those gorgeous green eyes of yours, he confessed quietly, lovingly brushing my bangs behind my ear. My breath stuttered as I tried to hold in a sob and move to sit up, or at least try to. Jasper, I barely managed to choke out, limbs shaking in my effort to move before he moves me to sit me up himself. I'm so sorry. Now don't start crying on me now. They'll have my hide if they think I made ya cry. He kissed my lids as he settled back in his seat after propping me up with little effort. His expression suddenly turned serious, and I recognized it as his major face, or rather, the expression he wears whenever he gets into a more disciplined, militaristic mentality. The rest of our coven is here, along with your mother, Renee. Esme called her. Right now, she's getting something to eat. What's the cover story? I blinked curiously when Jasper grimaced at my question. After 17 years of helping your sister, you were finally infected with her terrible luck, he scowled. You fell down 2 flights of stairs and through a window. I'm sure you've mentioned Isabella tripping down quite a few sets of stairs in her short lifetime. That's true, I mumbled, my own lips forming a grimace at the plausible but unsavory cover story. The last thing I wanted was to share Bella's luck. She could keep that. Thank you very much. The damage? A broken leg, 3 broken ribs, 1 cracked, some fractures in your skull. You're littered with bruises, and you lost a lot of blood. They gave you a few transfusions. I had to stop myself from snapping at them, because they made Yas smell all wrong for a while. I can imagine, I murmured, wondering how strange it must have been to scent my blood mixing with other people's. Creepy. How did you know I could do it? Jasper asked quietly, his hand seeking out mine, fingers twining gently together. It didn't take a genius to know what he was referring to. "Because I love you," the simple answer had him snap his gaze to mine in disbelief. I only smiled at him. "Because you love me. Because I trust that you would always put my continued health and safety before anything. Because I have faith in your absolutely unbelievable control over your thirst and mastery over your gift. Jasper, I've never once doubted that you could do anything but succeed in whatever you do." My chest grew warm when Jasper let out a short huff, as if his own emotions made it difficult for him to breathe properly, and buried his head in my lap, nuzzling into my stomach. "It's really that simple for ya, isn't it, darling?" Jasper murmured, not looking like he was moving soon. "Yes," I replied softly, using my now free hand to run my fingers through his hair, the other shifting to rest on the back of his cool, scarred neck, tracing the barely there scars I could see in the light and feel under my fingertips. "I could barely think beyond the thought of losing ya, of being the one to kill ya myself, because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to stop," he confessed, one hand tightening to a stone fist where it rested on the bed. "I don't think you really understand just how angry it makes me that you keep putting yourself in this life-threatening danger just to protect that girl, your sister, because she just don't matter to me if it comes down to only keeping one of you safe. At the same time, I can't exactly be angry at ya for doing all ya can to protect your family, even if it means putting yourself in danger, especially because I'd kill for my coven and protect them. Hell, I even get why ya didn't tell me about any of this. The car accident, Port Angeles, now this. If I'd known exactly what you were planning, I would have locked you up somewhere and let the others deal with the consequences." He closed his eyes, one hand lifting to cover mine where it had moved to cup his cheek. "Madeline," he started in a whisper, "nothing else matters more to me than keeping you safe." "Jasper," I barely managed to breath out. His single-minded devotion to me, even putting me before his own family, made my chest tighten almost painfully with the intense emotions such a confession wrought upon me. "You know, for a vampire, I remember quite a bit of my human life," he started, eyes still closed. "Maria questioned me endlessly after I got a rein over my thirst, having turned me because I was a military man and wanting that experience. But I remembered a lot of my childhood as well. As a kid, I remember dreaming about wanting to be a pirate. I couldn't help myself," I laughed. "Not hard because the action was a bit painful, but I managed. A pirate? That's adorable." "Don't laugh," he huffed good-naturedly, before sobering as he continued his story. "It was only after years of serving under Maria that I realized the reason I wanted to be a pirate as a kid was because I wanted freedom. The freedom to do what I wanted whenever I wanted to, selfish like most kids are before they grow up. I thought I had left that selfishness behind when I chose to join the army, then again when I joined the Cullens, and deciding to do all I could to protect them in return for them selflessly helping me get used to this new lifestyle, for taking me in as one of their own, but just this one selfish desire. I just want ya safe." I stayed silent. I didn't know what to say. What could I say in the face of his heartfelt confession? Apparently, I didn't have to mentally flounder very long when Jasper lifted his head slightly and cocked it to one side as if to hear something better. "Your mother is returning," he informed, returning his head to my lap, wrapping his arms carefully around my waist, and nudging me to continue combing his hair with my fingers, eyes closing in bliss when I complied. A few seconds later, I could hear my mother as well, sounding tired and upset as she spoke to someone, likely a nurse. I just slumped where I sat, taking comfort in the vampire curled in my lap, knowing the coming conversation was likely to be exhausting and already feeling tired myself. The door opened a crack, and she peeked through. "Tudo, I don't think we're in Kansas anymore," was the first thing I said to her in the way of a greeting. Of course my joke immediately relaxed her as I intended, her expression exasperated as she approached me. "That's the first thing you say to me, Madeline Hannah?" she sighed, eyeing Jasper, who was feigning sleep in my lap. "He never leaves, does he?" "Nope," I replied cheerily. She only shook her head and bent down to hug me gently. "Maddie, I was so worried." "I know. I'm sorry for worrying you, but everything is fine now," I comforted, using the hand not combing through Jasper's hair to rub my mother's back softly. "I'm just glad to finally see your eyes open." She sat on the open recliner, my bed fairly occupied. "How long have they been closed?" I asked curiously, not having thought to ask. The query not nearly as important as everything else that had happened. "It's Friday, Princess. You've been out for a while." 3 days. The incident had happened on Wednesday." They had to keep you sedated for a while, Princess. You've got a lot of injuries. Looks like Bella's luck finally rubbed off on me in a spectacular way. I half joked, half complained. Maddie, she called in reprimand, though her lips reluctantly twitched in amusement. You're lucky Dr. Cullen was there. He's such a nice man. Very young, though, and he looks more like a model than a doctor. You're such a gossip, Mom, I sighed in my own exasperation, smile affectionate as she giggled. The rest of the family is just as attractive and equally charming. Tell me about it, I smirked. I know you told me about how close you got to your boyfriend's family, but I didn't realize they already treasured you so much. I'm irresistible, I sniffed haughtily. Setting my mother off again. Maddie, she giggled, giving my arm a light, harmless slap. I shrugged, choosing to divert from the obvious topic for the moment. Where's Phil? Florida. Oh, Maddie, you'll never guess. Just when we were about to leave, the best news. Phil got signed, I assumed. Yes, how did you know? The Suns. Can you believe it? That's great, Mom. Phil must be over the moon. I grinned, genuinely happy for my stepfather. And you and Bella will like Jacksonville so much, she gushed while I froze at her words. I was a little bit worried when Phil started talking about Akron, what with the snow and everything, because you know I hate the cold. But now Jacksonville, it's always sunny and the humidity really isn't that bad. We found the cutest house, yellow with white trim, and a porch just like in an old movie, and this huge oak tree, and it's just a few minutes from the ocean, and you'll have your own bathroom. Well, you'll still share with Bella, but... Whoa, back up a bit, I interrupted hastily. That sounds great and all, but I've never given you any inclination that I want to move again, Mom. I live in Forks, but you and your sister don't have to anymore. Silly, she laughed. Phil will be able to be around so much more now. We've talked about it a lot, and what I'm going to do is trade off away games, half the time with you and your sister, half the time with him. Mom, I sighed, tiredly recalling just how little thought she puts into the thoughts and opinions of others, always choosing what she wants with little consideration to everyone else. It's not that I don't love you anymore, but I've lived with you for the first 17 years of my life, and had dreamed of being able to live with Charlie since you got together with Phil. He's a great guy, but you and him don't need two nearly grown girls taking your time from having a relationship with him if you don't need to. I know you love us and want us to be with you forever, but we've already grown up. We'll be 18 soon. What's the point of robbing Dad of the little time he'll have with us before we go to college? What's the point of transferring us to a new school for the second time in a year when we're so close to graduating? When we've finally settled into our new house and school? You both want to stay in Forks? She asked, bewildered and heartbroken. The idea was inconceivable to her. Then her eyes flickered to Jasper. I know you've always wanted to stay with your dad with some form of permanence, but you're talking as if Bella also wants to stay in Forks. I'm not the only one who found a big reason to stay. Jasper may not be my only reason like Edward is for Bella, but... Edward, the youngest brother, that boy is with our Bella? Yep, I chirped, finding her disbelief as amusing as I'd found Dad's. Is he as in love with Bella as this Jasper is of you? She asked almost worriedly. I'd say so. The love may be fundamentally different, but I'd say the intensity is about the same. I vaguely answered. I saw the matching rings, they're very beautiful, and look custom-made. I heard the unsaid expensive in her statement. They're promise rings, I said fondly, eyes gazing lovingly at the ring still on my finger, watching it disappear and reappear from Jasper's soft locks. He's already thinking about a life with you? Marriage, kids, a house together, she gasped. My Jasper is a very mature, decisive man. He knows what he wants in his life, I said, nodding along with my own words in further affirmation. Renee sighed. Just like you, huh, Princess? She smiled at me a bit sadly. You always did know what you want, didn't you? Always so firm where your sister was timid and unsure. Bella's overly cautious and she thinks you're reckless like I am, but I know both you girls inside and out. You've always been the most mature out of the three of us, even if it didn't seem like it. She was quiet then, and I didn't trust myself to speak for fear of my voice giving away my emotions. Renee may not have been a perfect mother, but no parent was perfect, and at least she made an effort to try. She loved us as much as she could, and I loved her in return for her efforts. I couldn't do anything less. It's probably for the best that you stay with Charlie, after all. She sniffed a bit, dabbing at the corners of her eyes with a sleeve. I know I've never exactly been Mom of the Year, and your sister has a lot to learn about being considerate, she let out a warbling laugh then. About as much as me, huh? Charlie's always been so good about thinking of others, and that's what you need. Your future husband there is probably even more amazing at it if he managed to snatch you up. She stood then, and I couldn't stay silent anymore. Mom. I'm sorry, she suddenly interrupted. I'm sorry for all the times I may have hurt you and Bella, she continued more softly. And thank you for still seeing me as your mother and loving me as one. You'll always be my mother, I replied in a shaky whisper. Renee grew teary-eyed again as she leaned in to give me another gentle hug. Phil's supposed to be calling soon, and your sister probably wants to have her own talk with you. So someone told her we fought. I'm glad you're okay, princess. She kissed my temple. I'll see you later, she gave one final wave before leaving the room. I slumped as soon as the door closed behind her, Jasper reluctantly sitting up from his position, not even realizing I had been tense throughout. I trailed off, at a loss for words. Unexpected, Jasper finished helpfully. I nodded in agreement, the word the tamest I could think of. Not a second later, a nurse came bustling in to check all the tubes and wires attached to me, and checking the paper read out on my heart monitor. A bit anxious about waking up in the hospital, sweetie, she asked gently. That, and my boyfriend gives some toe-curling kisses, I replied cheerily, giving the nurse an exaggerated wink, and making her chuckle. Well, tell him to ease up a bit, at least until you're out of the hospital, she chided us both in mock severity. Yes, ma'am, we tourist. I'll tell your RN that you're awake. She'll be in to see you in a minute. As soon as she closed the door, Jasper chuckled and shook his head. Do you have to charm everyone you meet? He asked. Just a second ago, you were emotional about your mother, but as soon as the nurse came in, you started flirting, he accused. With you or the nurse? I asked cheekily. He snickered but didn't get a chance to retort as another nurse purposefully strode towards me, eyeing us both sternly. When she saw our amusement, though her lips pursed as if holding back a smile, Lizzie told me you were a little charmer. That it's no wonder you snagged such a handsome man, she commented as she turned to the monitors. Just charming? I breathed as if deeply wounded. I must seriously be off my game, I lamented, making Jasper muffle his laughter behind one hand, and the nurse chuckled again as she tapped the IV feed. Cute, she said dryly. I suppose falling down 2 flights of stairs and out a window could account for your damaged charms. Speaking of damaged, I started only to pause when I spotted Bella and Edward silently enter the room, as if summoned by my words. It took more effort than I expected not to laugh at the multi-layered irony. You ready for more pain meds, sweetie? The nurse asked sympathetically, not having noticed the new guest yet. Yeah, but they might have to wait a bit. She turned to see where I was looking and nodded in understanding. She gave the 2 newcomers a stern gaze, making them visibly nervous. Well, I'll just leave you all to your talk, but remember it's better if she doesn't get too stressed. She needs to rest, she emphasized the last word before turning back to me. Hit the call button when you're ready, she ordered firmly. Will do, I grinned, giving a silly salute and making her laugh as she left. There was a short, awkward silence after she left, at least until Bella finally found the courage to speak. How are you feeling? She started awkwardly, voice stilted. Like shit, but thanks for asking, I replied sincerely. Meddlin'. Edward frowned in disapproval, only to get a growl from Jasper for his audacity to try reprimanding me for how I spoke to my own sister. Seriously, the fuck? What did you expect me to say, Mason? I scowled. Did you want me to lie and say Peachy Keen, Mindy mopes a lot? Doesn't hurt a bit. I scoffed. That'd be a bit hard to swallow when I'd been laid up in a hospital bed, unconscious, for the last 3 days. I rolled my eyes at his frown. If you're going to be here while they talk, then don't interfere, Jasper barked sharply to Edward from where he had moved to unobtrusively sit in the corner. Obviously unhappy, Edward complied and joined Jasper in staying silent in one corner of the room. Looking more nervous than before at Jasper's seeming bad mood, Bella returned her skittish gaze to me. Rosier told me about why you said all those things in the field. About what you did, she started quietly. Rosier told you quietly, I asked skeptically. Well, more like shouted, she admitted sheepishly, shivering. I thought she'd rip my throat out. It looked like she really wanted to. That makes much more sense, I sighed, leaning back against the pillows more firmly. Thank you, she whispered, quietly into the more comfortable silence, for taking my place. She took in a shuddering breath. I can't believe you'd do this. You could have died, and the last words I said to you, I yelled at you, and I... She ran a shaking hand through her hair, starting to get hysterical as she realized just how this could have turned out. "Bella," I said quietly, firmly, catching her attention. As soon as she looked up, I leaned forward and did the last thing she expected. I soundly slapped her. "Ow!" she cried as I hissed in pain, the movement hurting despite not putting my full strength into it. "What the heck was that for?" Bella asked in outraged disbelief, completely snapped out of the depression. "Now we're even," I told her, as if it should have been obvious. "Honestly, you're such a drama queen. You always say I'm dramatic. Pot and meat kettle." I laughed at her gobsmacked face before wincing at what the action cost me in pain. "Ha ha, ha ha. Your face," I pointed. "Oh, ow, 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 okay." No more laughing. Bella only groaned and started rubbing her temples as if to stave off a coming migraine. "I'm sorry," she continued, abruptly bringing the conversation back to a more serious vein. "Rosie went very in-depth as to my less than acceptable reaction to finding out about your ability. She pointed out that I was self-absorbed and selfish, among other things, and I had a lot of time to think over it when I thought you, while you were asleep, and realized she was right." Now I stared at Bella in wide-eyed disbelief. You reflected on your actions?" I breathed with an almost insulting amount of shock. Not that anyone could blame me. Seriously, did I land in the Twilight Zone? First, my mother apologizes. Now Bella. I can't even be offended that you're so surprised. I haven't been a very good sister to you recently. I could feel the skepticism wafting from Jasper without the aid of his gift at that last word. Recently, and I can't fix what I've done, but I can apologize for unintentionally hurting you. I suddenly felt very, very tired when I finally understood just what was going on. Oh, I see. So I just wanted to say, officially, I'm sorry for putting you in this situation by not believing in your ability and for any hurtful things I might have said about it before that. She's only apologizing for the fact that I was hurt by the stuff she specifically said regarding my gift, not anything else. She's insinuating I'm just oversensitive about it and that it's the only thing she needs to apologize for. She hasn't reflected at all. She still thinks she's done nothing wrong. I could only laugh breathlessly at the revelation. It was better than crying in my disbelief and disappointment. Don't worry about it. Not like you really care. You were ignorant of my ability, and continue to be ignorant of your own flaws. Well, 1 out of 2 isn't bad. At least Mom's apology was honest and sincere. Thank you. She sighed, seeming relieved the fight we had was over with. She didn't even realize I hadn't really accepted her apology or even forgiven her. I just told her not to worry about it. Now, can you please tell Edward that neither of us is leaving Forks? She scowled at her boyfriend. He's been encouraging me to accept Mom's invitation using your accident as an excuse to defend his argument that he's too dangerous to be with. Nope. I very well filled my quota of bullshit for one day. That Bella just totally flipped the conversation to push her problems on me and having the audacity to call my run-in with James an accident, and Edward using it as an excuse to further his own agenda. What the fuck was wrong with those two? Please, Jasper, for all that's good and holy, call someone to sedate me again, I pleaded to him, feeling very exhausted and ready for oblivion. Jasper only nodded and silently approached to press the button. Yes? The speaker on the wall squeaked while Bella looked at me in shock. We're ready for more pain medication in here, Jasper informed shortly, almost curt. I'll send in the nurse, the voice replied, a bit more attentive to the tone Jasper used, but still sounding a bit bored. Hey, aren't you going to say anything about... Bella, I cut in sharply as Jasper settled me into a resting position on the bed again. I'm not sure if you remember, but I am currently laying in a hospital bed because I have 3 broken ribs, 1 broken leg, a cracked rib, and skull. I'm recovering from massive blood loss, and am covered in bruises. I just woke up after 3 days, and I am still tired and in a fair amount of pain. I breathed in through my nose as I relaxed myself against the bed, ignoring how red Bella was turning from embarrassment at my reprimanding. Please, be a good little sister and leave Jasper and I well away from you and Edward's stupid domestic. Bella made a startled noise in the back of her throat, struggling to find something to say. She didn't get a chance of recover as the nurse returned and readily injected the medicine into my tube. Here you go, sweetie, she smiled. You'll feel better now. Thank fuck, I sighed, closing my eyes. Language, she chided teasingly. I could use Spanish if you prefer, or maybe Japanese or Korean. Oriental languages always sounded more graceful to me. I winked at the nurse, making her laugh. Cheeky, she muttered as my lids started to droop, the drowsiness kicking in almost immediately. That ought to do it. Thank goodness for small mercies, I slurred out sleepily, Jasper chuckling as he took a seat by my bedside and slid his hand in mine. Sleep, darlin'. I'll be here when you wake up, he murmured softly. Love you, I yawned. Love ya too, darlin'. I felt a brush of lips against mine right before the blissful, welcoming darkness took me again. Jasper effortlessly laid me in the passenger seat, mindful of the back of my dress as he sat me properly. Yep, that's right. We were going to prom. Not that I minded, since this would be Jasper's graduation prom, but no way he was going to miss out on my graduation prom next year. So 2 Forks proms it will be. For this prom, I picked a gothic dress with a black corset and high-low layered skirt and flat knee-high Roman gladiator sandals, which were the safest choice to wear. That could also go over my damn walking cast. For accessories, I had a black dahlia choker, a bleeding heart necklace, and matching earrings, a black corset cuff on my right wrist, and a black lace glove on my left arm, with mismatched ear wraps on both ears as well. Jasper himself was looking gorgeous in his own black tux and red filigree pattern vest to better match my red accessories and makeup. Rosali's work, along with my perfectly done curled hairdo, she'd only just let me go after doing finishing touches for the 3rd time. You're thinking hard over there, Jasper commented as he slid into the driver's seat. Just reminiscing, I smiled. On how much fun I have getting ready for occasions like this. The shopping, the dressing up, and then dancing at the event itself. I never really enjoyed the last too much because I never had feelings for my dates. One of his hands slid into mine as he drove. Until now, I agreed, returning his heated glance. Maybe now that you've got the right partner, you can finally enjoy the event more than ya do getting ready for it, he mused. I only scoffed. There's only so much enthusiasm I can muster for school dances, especially a small town one like this. Maybe you'll be more happy about the dinner I got planned for us after the prom, Jasper commented, idly, casually, as if he didn't just surprise me. You didn't. It took all I had not to trigger my gift with my excitement and ruin the surprise, my hands curling to fists in the effort. You're evil, I groaned. Jasper only laughed. I'll be sure to sufficiently distract you through the night until then, he promised. And with the heated glance he shot me from head to toe and back, I believed him. Reluctantly, he turned his gaze from me to his phone when it vibrated once. I saw his expression tighten and heard something between a thoughtful hum and annoyed growl escape his mouth. What's up? I would have looked myself, but this was the one night I allowed myself to be willfully blind, so to speak, of the future, because I wanted to experience the first dance I had with Jasper firsthand. But if something horrible happened, my gift would show me whether I wanted to or not, as I would hope it would. Seems like Carlisle and I are going to need to have another little talk. His lip curled slightly over his perfect teeth. Mainson just informed me that Crowley went to your house to pick your sister up for prom. I blinked, having forgotten that happened in the books. Well, shit. It's not like I felt bad the guy was going to get an impending threat from Jasper. He obviously deserved it since the guy apparently tried to peer pressure my sister into going to prom with him. He obviously needed a vampire-delivered lecture on consent. Given what I remembered of Bella's reaction to finding out just where Masson was taking her, he could use a similar lecture. Just because Bella folds like wet paper to him batting his eyes at her, doesn't mean that what he did in the first place was okay, honestly. You think Esme took enough pictures for you and your dad? Jasper questioned, smirking at the memory and obviously trying to distract me from the snit I was working myself into with my thoughts. It obviously worked when I remembered the second thing that almost made us late, besides Rosie's perfectionism. Esme had taken picture after picture of us in different places around the house, intent on sending copies to my dad to mark the occasion. Bella, of course, used the opportunity to escape with Edward, but Esme still managed to snag a few of the two before they left. He'll be ecstatic to add to the pictures on the mantle. I smiled genuinely at the thought. Proof of important memories were very precious to Dad in regards to his children, especially when one of them is so photography-phobic that the only pictures he has of her are school yearbook photos and the handful that Renee occasionally chose to send. I, however, was the subject of many of the pictures scattered throughout the house, sometimes alone, but more often doing something with Dad like fishing or hiking or camping. There were even some very recent photos of me in the hospital with my dad sleeping by my bed, courtesy of Jasper, having flown over to Seattle as soon as he heard and rarely leaving my side. The day I woke up was actually the day Carlisle had finally convinced my dad to go to the hotel room they rented and get cleaned up. He was already on his way back when he got the news I woke up, and he was there when I woke up again later, the next day.
Are ya ready?
Jasper asked, breaking me out of my musings as I realized we had arrived. I smiled at him and slid my hands up his arms to his shoulders as his own hands firmly held my waist and gracefully lifted me to my feet as if I weighed no more than a feather. I remember last year's winter formal in my old school being held in the gym. The only time since I started going to that school, I mused aloud as Jasper led us inside, approaching the ticket table. Heard dances in bigger schools like that held in hotel ballrooms or nightclubs. They are, it's just that the dance committee dropped the ball on the planning and didn't do a good job fundraising or renting anywhere out in a timely manner. Instead, they went for low budget but creative retro theme to give an excuse for why they were having the dance in the gym. Rosie had scoffed, Emmett snickering as we approached, close enough now for me to hear their reactions to my story. Rosie was, of course, looking like a goddess in a strapless, backless satin red mermaid dress. Emmett matching her in his dapper black tux and red tie. Looks like black and red are the Cullen's theme this year, Emmett laughed. And it was true, unintentional as it may have been. On my part, at least. Once Rosie discovered I'd be using red accessories with my black dress. And Jasper wearing a red vest to match after she'd already gotten her own scarlet red dress. Rosie bought a maroon ruffled chiffon dress for Bella and tossed a matching red bow at Edward so the whole family would match. I had at first wondered at Rosie's generosity, having helped me dress Bella and put makeup on her. But I realized she enjoyed helping Edward force her into an event that Bella obviously loathed without her even realizing where we were going. Nothing out of character about Rosalie enjoying Bella's suffering, after all. No one has started dancing yet, I questioned, one brow raising when I looked around to see the other students milling around and not so discreetly gaping and gawking at us. Rosalie sniffed and flipped back some of her immaculate curls. They've been too busy drooling over us to even start. No chance of them dancing now that you two have also showed up. For sure, Emmett laughed. You definitely fit right in, little sis. I doubt you'd look much different if you were a vampire, he grinned. Sorry, Big Bear. I only blush at compliments like that if they come from my Jasper. I smirked, only to flush when Jasper took my hand and gave a gentlemanly bow, kissing my knuckles like the southern gentleman he was. May I have this dance, my lady love? He asked, eyes smoldering as he glanced up through his gorgeous blonde lashes. It'd be my pleasure, I replied lovingly, giving a perfect little curtsy and following him to the center of the empty dance floor. Come on, babe. We can't let them show us up in the disgustingly romantic department. I heard Emmett behind us. That's always been our thing. Rosie scoffed, even as both Emmett and Jasper lifted one hand and placed another on our waist, waiting for the next song to start. Only because we were the only Cullen couple at school before they got together, she retorted. But no more was said when the next song started, and Jasper and Emmett led Rosie and I in a flawless, synchronized waltz. After having gone so long without dancing, the last time being before we moved to Forks, I'd forgotten how exhilarated and bubbly it made me feel. How much I loved to dance, and now that I had my love as my partner, there was also this amazing innocent ecstasy, a sense of euphoria at dancing so gracefully with my other half. Every step and twirl and arch was a more physical declaration of our love to each other than even sex was, and maybe I was romanticizing it, but if it made me feel this elated all the time, then I had nothing to complain about. If dancing with me makes you feel this amazing. His expression was full of wonder and adoration as he lifted and twirled me. We're going to be doing it much more often after your legs completely healed. I could only laugh breathlessly as he put me on my feet again, feeling like I was floating with the way Jasper barely let my feet touch the floor through the dance. On one of the twirls halfway in the third song, which in no way matched the beautiful waltz we were doing, I not only noticed that Massin and Bella had arrived and joined us on the dance floor, but that Jacob had arrived as well. Ignore it, Jasper said immediately, easily leading us the farthest away from both parties. Let the magnet and her boy deal with it. A startled laugh escaped me at his new names for my sister and his brother. You call my sister the magnet in your head? I giggled disbelievingly. That must drive Massin up the wall. I laughed aloud as he smirked at my statement, telling me I was absolutely right. Despite his words, though, my eyes were drawn to where Jacob and Bella had started awkwardly dancing. Darlin', my eyes found their way back to Jasper's. Ignore them, it's just you and me right now. He pulled me just a bit closer, hands firm, gaze intense, and I willingly lost myself in him. You and me, I smiled, stealing a kiss when he dipped me. Life at the Cullens' house had finally settled down after the James debacle, Maddie having been given a clean bill of health just last week. The vampire family was lounging around the house, all doing their own activities. Rosalie designing clothes in a sketch pad, Esme designing homes beside her on the couch, Emmett on the floor playing video games, Carlisle replaying the last chess game he and Maddie played, and Edward fiddling with his piano like always. It happened in an instant. Edward had finished playing for the day and was returning to his room, only to suddenly be sent skidding across the forest floor after receiving a solid kick to his chest. Jasper! Carlisle cried, up just a second too late to stop Jasper from following his target out the open window he had just kicked Edward out of. I wouldn't get involved, Carlisle. Rosalie hadn't even flinched, continuing her sketching, uninterrupted. Rosie? Esme had also stood in shock, but was unsure what to do. Rose is right. The surprisingly serious statement came from Emmett, who had paused his game to address the coven leader. Jasper's been itching to punish Edward for the crap he pulled with Maddie, but he was just protecting his mate. Esme gasped in shock. Doesn't matter, Rosalie sneered. Edward protecting his mate meant Jasper's mate got hurt. His reasons for letting it happen are hardly going to matter to Jasper. Carlisle sighed, becoming resigned. He could hardly blame Jasper when Emmett would have retaliated much the same should something similar have occurred to Rosie. The only reason this seemed so much worse was because it was Jasper who was punishing him. He was undoubtedly the most skilled in their coven, able to defeat any of them because of his experience alone. I suppose Jasper won't kill him. The coven leader reluctantly sat down and decided it best to distract himself until Jasper felt satisfied. Knowing the Major, his punishment would be brutal but swift, efficient. Carlisle returned his thoughts to the chessboard, knowing if he thought longer on it, the more likely he was to desire interfering. Edward was hasty to right himself once the shock wore off, crouching close to the ground as he finally stopped his progress, one hand over his middle where he was kicked. His eyes darted back the path he made, wide with disbelief and a healthy amount of fear, as Jasper's approaching thoughts were filled with his memories of the Southern Blood Wars. All the unfiltered experiences Edward was forced to relive horrified him and made him realize just how disciplined Jasper had to be to have only given him glimpses before, when something triggered his memories. He didn't have much longer to think on it when Jasper was upon him, and shocked the boy when the older vampire efficiently quickly tore off his arm and pinned him to the ground. Unable to move, Edward hadn't been able to read any of Jasper's actions in his thoughts at all, and now Edward could hardly think himself beyond his own pain. You feel that, boy? Jasper growled from above him, keeping his victim still. You haven't ever been hurt as a vampire, have ya? The Major sneered and pulled the severed arm just a bit nearer, gratified to feel the slightly intensified pain coming from him. When a part of a vampire is ripped off of them, the missing part emotionally screams at being separated. It's what causes the pain, not the actual ripping itself, and the closer the piece gets to the main body, but can't reconnect, the more painful it gets. The best part is that the pain doesn't stop until the missing piece is destroyed. The main body is destroyed, or it reconnects and heals back to normal. Jasper smirked at the waves of shock horror pain, fear he felt rolling off of the younger vampire as he reminisced, and the boy saw it all. Yeah, a nifty little trick I learned in my time with Maria, when she found out she had me perfected in an art form on any spies or prisoners of war we caught that were resistant to my gift. Jasper continued casually. What? You drove them insane. Edward gasped in utter terror and more shock. Jasper only smirked quite darkly. Turns out vampires can change after they're turned, he chuckled. At least mentally. Jasper pressed him more firmly into the ground, moving the limb just an inch away from where it was torn to greatly intensify the pain. This is me teaching ya, boy. If you ever try to sacrifice Maddie again, and it don't matter to me who for, I'll lock both you and your mate up together, and let her watch as I slowly drive you insane, and then I'll let you go, and watch you kill her in your insanity, the Major promised darkly. And Edward knew he wasn't lying. The mind reader could already see that very scenario being so vividly pictured in Jasper's thoughts. That's madness. Madeline would never forgive you for killing her sister. Nah, she would, Jasper immediately, confidently rebutted. She'd be right mad at me for a couple of years, but she'd forgive me and still love me the same, and the waiting would be worth it because she'd no longer be in pain or danger caused by you or your mate again. Jasper languidly raised the torn limb and viciously bit into its forearm, inserting as much of his venom as he could with one bite before suddenly reattaching the limb to Edward and relishing the agonized screams he let out at Jasper's foreign venom. Combating with his own, he knew from experience how painful another vampire's venom was if they weren't your mate. Now, Edward did too. "You're best to remember this lesson, boy." "Yeah, I ain't getting another one," Jasper growled in warning, as he stood and left the young mind-reader writhing in pain to hunt, needing to take the edge off his heightened predatory instincts lest he go through with his desires to kill the younger vampire and be done with it. He'd let this incident go only once, and he was nice enough to even give a warning, because they were brothers under the same coven leader, even if it's only been about a decade since he joined. But that was all the leeway he was gonna get. The Major didn't give second chances. I was hanging out at the Cullen house, relishing the undervalued freedom that came with being completely healthy and snuggling with Jasper on the couch. Jasper nuzzled my neck, content to just watch me sketch some clothes designs I planned to share with Rosio later, humming along with the soothing, shuffled playlist of instrumental music I'd set up with my iPod. Turns out the Cullens appreciate my taste in instrumental music, even if half of it is the soundtrack to movies and shows. It didn't stop them from appreciating that it was all good. Then, the oriental flavor of the music shifted to classic waltz, and Jasper suddenly let out a low, rumbling chuckle that made me shiver. "Maddie, how long has it been since we last waltzed?" "Oh, Jasper," I sighed dramatically as I set aside the sketch pad and let him lift me to my feet. "Hours." Not 3 seconds into our dance, Emmett snorted. "Did you seriously just quote the Addams Family?" "Gomez and Morticia have always been my couple goals," I sighed again, this time dreamily. Jasper played along and lifted one hand to kiss the back of it firmly. "Kramia," he whispered passionately. "Mon cher," I whispered back, leading to Jasper dipping me low and kissing the breath out of me. We didn't pull apart, even when Emmett mock-gagged, until we were good and ready, the little skit we did making the rest of the family laugh, Rosie included. "Come on, babe, we can't let these saps show us up." Emmett pulled Rosie up and started dancing with her as well. "Shall we, my dear?" Carlisle asked, bowing to Esme, who giggled cutely and took his offered hand. Soon enough, we were all laughing and dancing with our respective partners, occasionally play-acting the part of dancing couples from movies or shows. It was one of the best times I had at the Cullens. Kitty Cat Vixen, how come Edward and Bella's honeymoon phase is still going on? Like, why are they both so delusional? My previous response to explain away Edward and Bella's unhealthy relationship behaviors as a honeymoon phase may have been misleading since phases are generally meant to end at some point, but I didn't see any of that in canon despite all the plot where character growth could be employed. At most, Edward maybe learns that he's not always right, and that vampires can't possibly be soulless monsters because his beloved is one. At least, I'd like to think that was the case after 4 books, but don't quote me on it. Then there's Bella, who makes a very relatable character to preteens and teens, but tends to become very shallow and flawed the closer you scrutinize her thoughts and actions throughout the series. Considering just where the author got her inspiration, I'd say Canon Bella is something along the lines of a Mary Sue self-insert, not to bash on the author or story, since she's popular and sold millions for a reason, and all that, and likely most novels are a form of Mary Sue Garista and/or self-insert stories. If you really look, including my own, the beauty of literature. I think I went on a bit of tangent, though. The point is, Canon Edward and Bella never really developed as characters. None of them did really, except maybe Jacob, and not in a good way, and that's going to remain true even with Maddie in the picture. If anything, having a sister both to use abuse and have someone others can compare Bella to only makes them seem worse than they really are. I'm hopeful I can add some gradual, very gradual character development for the two, but it's proven to be quite difficult because both are so relentlessly stubborn and unwilling to change. I'd honestly intended for Bella to sincerely reconcile with Maddie in the hospital scene, but couldn't realistically picture it. Edward's a tiny step closer, at least. His constant watch on Maddie's thoughts has made him very reluctantly conflicted regarding his own worldviews, but he stubbornly refuses to acknowledge Maddie might be right. Denial runs strong and deep within that boy. Angelic Sailor, did you know from the beginning of this book that Alice in some way was still going to be around, haunting everyone? Or was it more of a gradual progression? And I kind of have another question if you don't mind. I really want to know about if Alice and Maddie's gift to see the future has any differences. Like how both Edward and Arrow can read minds. They just work differently, but still have the same effect. And how there's a category of tracker gifts, I guess you could say. Like Dimitri's gift works differently than Alistair's or James. I would assume it's likely that since gifts are semi-rare that no two are the exact same. You asked some really good questions. I'm a bit surprised no one asked the second yet, though they actually might have and I just have terrible memory. First question, I knew after I think the first 5 chapters or so that Alice was going to be in my story. I didn't feel quite right erasing her completely. She is an awesome character, and my editor friend eagerly jumped on the Alice wagon when we were planning out the chapter where James's coven came in and I shot her. My idea, so I knew pretty early on Alice was going to make an appearance. As for the second question, yes, you are absolutely correct in thinking that Maddie and Alice's precognitive gifts are different. I also share the belief that in the Twiverse, no two gifts are exactly the same. Even if the difference is very minute, there is a difference, because no two people are exactly the same either, not even twins. The biggest differences between their gifts is what they see in their visions, why they see it, and how they experience it. The way I've chosen to interpret Alice's gift, her ability to see into the future, is more limited, more static, a bit more rigid than Maddie's. She can't see the limitless branches of potential futures, only the likeliest paths the future can take, somewhere between 2 to 4 possible futures, and she can only see very large, important events, intentional or otherwise. She can't see as she has never experienced, people-wise, shapeshifters, dampers, and I assume werewolves also. But I think that has more to do with her own personality of having trouble understanding things or people she's never had experience with. Maddie is different in that her gift is much more flexible. Her very open and wise personality makes it so she doesn't need to experience something firsthand to understand it, which is why, small spoiler alert, Maddie will be able to see anything human or non-human in the future as clearly as she can see everyday visions. Now, spoiler done, when she sees the future, she sees every possible future available because, unlike Alice, who chooses the path most profitable to her from less than a handful, Maddie is much more cunning and persistent in finding a way around an undesirable future to get exactly what she wants, rather than contenting herself with the lesser of two evils. Maddie never compromises her desires unless there's absolutely no other choice, and if there isn't one, she makes it. In the end, you could say that the difference in their gifts really comes down to what they believe the future to be. Alice is of the belief that the future is set in stone between the few paths she sees and that they'll happen regardless of what she does. Maddie, on the other hand, is of the belief that the future is fluid, that it is not yet written, and that she has the ability to change it. In short, Alice believes it is fate that makes our choices, while Maddie believes it is our choices that make fate. Agape and Eros. Edward is upset. I defended her. I can understand why. I hadn't actually intended to defend her at all, but the only thing I could remember as Edward adamantly voiced his suspicions of her was the strength of her feelings towards our family, towards me. It hadn't been anything I could have expected. It wasn't the shallow lust, the casual admiration, or even the petty jealousy I often felt from other humans. It had been joyful familiarity, warm affection, bubbly adoration, and fiery, untainted love. It was overwhelming. In a sea of shallow, washy emotions, hers carried the depth of the vast sea, the intensity of a spectacular sunrise, and the vivacity of a summer storm. Even among the heightened emotional range of our own kind, her feelings captivated me. They swept over me with a force strong enough to make me forget my own thirst, a feat I never believed possible before then, but it hardly mattered. Nothing mattered save for the love this beautiful, fragile human girl held for us, her joy, her peace, her affection, her acceptance. I don't think I could have done anything but fall hopelessly in love with her acceptance, in love of my family, her love for me. Is that wrong of me? In some way it must be, but who could ever give me what she already has? Even my own new family still regards me with caution, flinching or tensing occasionally when a movement highlights the worst of my scars, but this human, Edward readily spilled her secrets to us, told us she already knew what we were before she saw us, that she knew us. He didn't seem happy with my thoughts then. He wouldn't be since I was championing her by pointing out that she knows and obviously still feels nothing but good things about us, that she was obviously going to say or do nothing to give us away. He would have preferred I be as I usually was and recommend getting rid of the threat. He seems even more displeased when I informed him such was still an option with his singer, my human's twin sister. A singer was much more of a threat to outing our existence than a gifted human. If Edward was going to be petulant and pick favorites simply because one sister fascinated him and the other frustrated him, why couldn't I do the same? At least my reasons weren't so shallow or petty. My own reasoning was sound, and my human sister had done nothing to gain my attention, to separate her from the other humans that wandered the world, beyond being able to completely shield her mind from Edward. Her emotions were just as bland and scattered as the rest, not even holding a candle to her. Perhaps now that Edward's run off to Alaska to sulk, I could more freely watch my human, learn more about her. If what I felt from her and what little Edward saw from her mind are any indication, it's something I rather look forward to. As requested by Cheyenne and others maybe. A little snippet of Jasper's journal the same day first sight happened. Hope you like it. Bookkeeper 88. Does Maddie fear Eru using his gift on her? Maddie does fear using his gift on her. She's an intensely private person, though she may not seem like it. She considers her mind her sanctuary, so it should be obvious that she dislikes Edward on principle, though she tries to give him a little bit of slack since he can't help it, but him intentionally digging into her thoughts to spill her secrets because he feels entitled to them doesn't help endear him to her any. Likewise, she'd be quite happy to never meet the Volturi King, whose gift is far more invasive, scanning every memory she's ever had. Yeah, Maddie hates the very idea of someone violating her sanctuary so thoroughly. Guests, when did Jasper fall in love with Maddie? Is Maddie going to meet Charlotte and Peter? As you can probably tell from above, Jasper fell for her from day one. I couldn't help myself disgusting romantic at heart that I am. Maddie is going to meet Charlotte and Peter, likely much sooner than you'd think. Time Twilight, will Maddie and Bella find out what Jasper did to Edward? No. Neither Bella nor Maddie will be informed of the incident that happened in Epilogue 2. I wrote it with the intention that it's something that stays between them, an event that remains unspoken but remembered in the coven. Maddie likely had some idea that something like it would happen, but she wasn't personally interested in seeing it, so she never saw it in her visions or asked Jasper about it, or anything. So no, the Swan sisters remain largely unaware of the incident, and will continue to be so. I may mention it in passing later, but there won't be any large confrontation beyond maybe Bella finding out at some point and raising a pointless stink about it, but that's as dramatic as it would ever get. Roxlicio. Hello. I just wanted to ask, if the venom of the mania the vampire doesn't burn or cause pain, is it just neutral? Also, I wanted to know if Maddie would ever grow out her hair. It seems like an interesting idea, but she's beautiful either way. Thank you for writing. I love this story. I'm actually still toying between the ideas of maid venom being ineffective, i.e. painless, or causing pleasure or other feel-good emotions like an aphrodisiac, or feeling high without compromising mental faculties, like a cheering charm or something. If you all have a preference, one way or another, feel free to tell me. I am also toying with the thought of Maddie growing out her hair. Only a little bit, though. I've already made the decision since her conception that her hair will never be longer than the top of her shoulders. Maybe the bangs framing her face could be longer, but I'm undecided. Maddie's far too in love with the practicality of her short hair, and if she wants long hair to style, she could always use extensions, or ask Rosie or Esme. Pyrrhatry. Devouring time, blunt thou the lion's paws, and make the earth devour her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaw, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Make glad and sorry seasons as thou fleets. And do whate'er thou wilt, swift-footed time, to the wide world and all her fading sweets. But I forbid thee one most heinous crime. Okay, carve not with thy hours my love's fair brow, nor draw no lines there with thine antique pen, him in thy course untainted. Do allow, for beauty's pattern to succeeding men. Yet do thy worst, old time, despite thy wrong. My love shall in my verse ever live young. I couldn't help but sigh as I languidly stretched from where I lay on Jasper, his deep, husky voice sending pleasant tingles all through my body. Have I ever told you you have the voice of a sex god? I murmured lazily against his cool neck, unable to help myself and kissing the silvery scarring I felt there with my lips. Jasper shivered slightly at my actions, his free hand moving to stroke my arched back as he chuckled. No, but it's certainly nice to know, he replied smoothly, sliding his hand up until his fingers twined in my hair. I'll be sure to read poetry to Yak as often as I'm able now. I only smiled warmly as I lifted my head to give Jasper's lips a lingering kiss. My Jasper, I whispered, lovingly to him. My Madeline, Jasper whispered back, his arms tightening protectively around me. After shower routine, it was mesmerizing to watch. The innocent sensuality behind every movement was an enticement almost impossible to resist, and it was all completely unintentional. The first time I had been witness to her after shower routine had been the same day we had taken the final physical step to deepening our relationship. She showered before going to bed, but chose to finish her routine in the privacy of her room as she usually did when alone rather than in her bathroom when she knew I'd be staying over. She told me there was no need for modesty when we'd already seen so much of each other. After finally having sex, then she'd proceeded with her routine as if I wasn't even there. I hadn't thought her actions would be so damn tempting. The first thing she did was spread the towel on her bed and lay on it like she was at the beach, naked as the day she was born. Then she proceeded to treat my eyes with the sight of her thoroughly rubbing creamy white body lotion all over her skin until it gleamed softly in the low light. Every stroke, every caress she gave her limbs with those warm, small hands drove me further and further into madness. And the way she lifted her legs straight up to press against her naked chest to lather cream on the back of her thighs, displaying not only her tantalizing flexibility but those soft, trimmed, dirty blonde curls pointing straight to her most treasured spot. Well, I would gladly take the blame for Maddie needing another shower after I had pounced on her and held her captive until we were both thoroughly sated. Religion. So we already covered that. I'm spiritual, I mentioned as I flipped through my hardcover of Dante's Inferno, but I'm curious as to what faith you follow. Jasper paused from where he was slowly looking through one of my art portfolios before putting it back and sitting between my feet to rest his head on my torso. I stopped believing in God the moment I realized what I'd been turned into and for what purpose, he confessed. He rumbled in comfort and pleasure in response to the sharp pang in my chest at his words and my setting aside the book to run my fingers through his soft hair. Religion is about having faith, isn't it? Jasper mused, of being wholly devoted to something. My breath hitched as I realized where he was going. How could I not with the way he turned to reverently look up at me? Molten gold eyes whirling with unfathomable depths of love and adulation. Then you are my one and only goddess, Madeline, always, he whispered passionately as he leaned up until our lips met, kiss chaste but firm.